Okay, welcome everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. This is our September 3rd meeting. We will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by an invocation by Alderman Vaughn, and then a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Our God and our Father, our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the one that made us all in his image and his likeness, that made us a little bit lower than angels, the one that is able to do all things but fail. Father God, it is in the mighty name of Jesus that as a few of your handmaid servants we come before you again, Father, with the affairs of the cities on our heart. We thank you so much for what you all allowed all us to achieve in this city. We pray, God, that you would just continue to strengthen us and strengthen our thoughts, our minds, and ideas, that every decision that we make and everything you allow to achieve, we give praise and honor and glory to you because you're the reason for all things that we do. We just thank you for being our God, and we're your servant, our Father, and we are the children. We pray, Father God, that you would just direct our thoughts tonight, the mayor of the board, and all the department heads, Father God, that we would do the things that are pleasing to you. And Father God, we please you, we can please man. And Father, we pray so much for the Greenwood Fire Department, Father, and their loss. But Lord, we just ask you now that you will fill this place with your Holy Spirit. Lead, guide, and direct us the way we should go, not we ourselves. We just thank you so much, God. We love you, we need you, we glorify you. We magnify your name because of who you are and what you are. Thank you again for being our God and we're your servants, being our Father and we are the children. Thank you for controlling our destiny, not leaving us in the hand of no man. It is in the mighty name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here this evening, starting our sort of fall semester of our board meetings. Next item for us to address is going to be the approval of the official agenda with consented items. Do we have any changes to the agenda from the board, either consented items or the official agenda? Any changes from board members? Any changes? All right, seeing none. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the consented items as listed in the printed agenda?
Move approval.
I have a motion from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Beatty. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you so much. Motion carries 7-0. And I will at this time read those consented agenda items. Consideration of the minutes of the August 6th, 2019 regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Consideration of the minutes of the August 16th, 2019 work session meeting of the Mayor and the Board of Aldermen of the City of Starkville. Under Mayor's business, consideration of project closeout and related contract extension in Starkville Parking Garage CDBG project number R-103-347-01-KED. Under Community Development Code Enforcement, this is consideration of calling for a public hearing under Mississippi Code annotated 21-1911 to determine whether the building located at 109 Roosevelt Taylor Sr. Drive or old address of 109 Beatty Street is a menace to the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. Next item is consideration of calling for a public hearing under Mississippi Code annotated 21-1911 to determine whether the building located at 307 Apple Street is a menace to the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. Under Planning, we have consideration of calling for the first public hearing on the adoption of the updated place type maps for the comprehensive plan. Under Finance Administration, item 2 is consideration of approval of the fiscal year 2020 source of supply bids received. Under the Fire Department, it's request reimbursement of $533 for Coleman Norman's summer 2019 classes toward the Fire Protection Technology degree taken under the City of Starkville Educational Assistance Program. Number 2 is request permission to allow Quinn Dirt Service permission to construct a 50 by 60 dirt pad at the Fire Station 5 to be used for a future storage building for a cost of $6,000. This is the lowest of the two quotes. Under HR, we have number 2, which is request authorization to hire Chase Bear as an entry-level firefighter in the Starkville Fire Department. Request authorization to hire Javante Harris as a maintenance worker 2 in the Sanitation Environmental Services Department. And request authorization to hire Noah Brandon as a civil engineer intern in the engineering department. Under the Police Department, item 1 is consideration to allow Corporal Charles Jones to attend Safari Land Less Lethal Instructor Course in Ringgold, Georgia, September the 11th through the 13th, at a cost not to exceed $750. Number 2 is consideration of a renewal of the agreement with Pine Lake Church, Inc. and the City of Starkville Police Department. Under Sanitation Department, there's 1, consideration to advertise for the annual purchase of 13,000 rolls of garbage bags. Number 2 is request approval to declare the Environmental Service Department's M108S 2011 Kubota tractor serial number 71921 as surplus property, advertised for sale and sell to the highest bidder, and to purchase a 2019 Exmark Laser Z diesel mower, state contract number 82-0004368, at a cost of $32,325, and direct the city clerk to advertise for financing quotes. Under Utilities, number 1 is request authorization to declare the Water Division 2003 Ford F-350 VIN number 1FT8W3053EC57520 pickup truck as surplus and to auction on Gov Deals, and authorization to purchase a vehicle replacement from state contract at a cost of $24,666. Second is request authorization to declare the Pitney Bowes postage machine model 3C00/4C00/6C00, serial number 0867544, as surplus property, advertised for sale and sell to the highest bidder. Number 3 is request authorization to declare the Water Division 1994 Ford Ranger VIN number 1FTCR10X3RUC71565, 1998 Chevy dump truck VIN number 1GBHR34KXJJ118525, and their 1998 Dodge 1500 VIN number 1BCHC16Y9XS175679, and the Electric Division 1993 Crown Victoria VIN number 2FALP71W2RX118494, 1995 Ford Ranger VN 1FTCR14X9SPA77640, and 2002 Ford Ranger VIN number 1GCCS19W728177718 as surplus, and to auction on Gov Deals, and authorization to purchase an electric vehicle replacement in the amount of $32,050. Number 4 is request authorization for Jacob Forrester of Starkville Utilities to travel to San Antonio, Texas, to attend the American Public Power Association, APPA, Leadership Summit on October the 1st and 2nd, 2019, with costs not to exceed $2,500, which includes registration, lodging, meals, and travel. Number 5 is request authorization to enter a rental agreement for 2 20 horsepower and 1 15 horsepower S&N Aeroflow Flex Drive hot dipped galvanized horizontal floating brush rotor from S&N Aerolo Inc. in the amount of $17,457 for the first 3 months. Request authorization to accept Hawk SCADA, only company to submit a proposal, RFQ, for SCADA integration, maintenance, and support services for the wastewater plant and lift station. Number 7 is request authorization for the City of Starkville to enter into a long-term power contract amendment with the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. Number 8 is request authorization to upgrade Mobile 311 to the provider's newest platform, Asset Essentials, and authorization to add the electric module along with an inventory program in the amount of $25,798. And number 9 is request authorization to proceed as an emergency purchase of an insert valve in the amount of $15,500 for the Loxley Way 12-inch water main break per Mississippi Code Section 31713 sub K, and that an emergency exists such that the delay incident to giving opportunity for competitive bidding would be detrimental to the interest of the governing authority. And that concludes the consent agenda items, and my voice.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're most welcome. All right. Next item is under Mayor's comments, and actually going back to the last item on, well, not the last item. Yeah, it was the last item, the emergency purchase of the inserter valve. Let me say that I want to recognize Mr. Kemp and Mr. Forrester and all of the workmen who worked on that water main break for, I don't know, 15 hours or longer. Mr. Kemp, was it longer than 15 hours? It was a long water main, and y'all did yeoman's work. So thank you so much for doing that, because you worked from noon into the morning. So even I can count. Yes, it's much longer than 15 hours. But yes, thank you so much for that, because that was tough duty. So okay, thank you. All right. So under mayor's comments, I have employee introductions, and it's always one of my great pleasures to do that. So I want to take this opportunity to introduce our new employees to both the public and our board members, so that when we see you out and about, we can say hello and thank you for what you do. So the first person to introduce would be Mr. Gregory Grayer. All right. Mr. Grayer is from Starkville and is a graduate of Starkville High School. And before joining the city of Starkville, Gregory was a painting contractor. And during his free time, Gregory enjoys spending time with his family and his pit bull Gucci and playing Fortnite. And I have to ask, what is Fortnite? Y'all don't laugh at my ignorance. What is Fortnite? Is it just like a video game, one of those shoot 'em up kind of thingies? All right, cool. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grayer. We appreciate your being with us. And next is Mr. Eric Purnell, who is also a laborer in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department. Eric is originally from Starkville and is a graduate of Starkville High School. Eric previously worked for Popeye's Chicken. He enjoys hanging out with his family. He attends Bethel Missionary Baptist Church in Starkville. Okay, so is it true that chicken sandwich is as good as everybody says it is?
I won't work in there that long, so I won't eat.
You know? All right, Mr. Purnell, we appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And last but not least is Roger Richardson. Mr. Richardson is a laborer in the Sanitation and Environmental Services. Roger is from Starkville and is a graduate of East Oktibbeha High School. Prior to joining the city of Starkville, Roger worked at Haven 12. When Roger has free time, he enjoys spending time with his family and working out. So welcome. Thank you so much. All right, and that is all of my comments. Does anyone on the board have any comments they'd like to make? Anyone?
I'll just say two
Mr.
reminders.
Carter?
We've got emails on them, but the night market is going to be Friday, September the 6th. That's from about 5 to 9 o'clock, and then we'll have another citywide tailgate on Friday, September the 13th, and that's going to be in the noon time. It's roughly from about 11 until 1:30 or 2 o'clock. So both of those great events leading into the football season. Thank you.
And thank you for reminding me, because we also have Get Swept Up tomorrow morning quite early. So at 7 o'clock at the partnership, if you want to come help pick up, clean up Starkville, there'll be a whole contingent of folks getting T-shirts and getting out and hitting the streets and cleaning up. So come join us and help us pick up and make Starkville sparkle for our upcoming first home game. So thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Alderman Vaughn.
I just want to announce that the walk track at J.L. King Park is completed. All just liking it's a landscaping, but most of all, we back walking at the track, so the track is open for everyday walk again. Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you for reminding about that. Are we going to have a ribbon cutting
Yeah,
on Mr.
thank you.
Mr. Logan, are we going to have a ribbon cutting on that? Do we have a date set yet? Okay. No, the answer was no, but we will set something up and you'll let everyone know, right? Okay, thank you. All right, the next, assuming no one else, Alderman Sistrunk, I'm sorry.
While we're bragging on staff and that sort of thing, I will say that the refinishing of the basketball courts are looking really good. I've seen the ones at McKee, and I'm looking forward to the tennis court refinishing and conversions of some of those courts to pickleball. So we are making steady progress in improving our parks.
Absolutely. Ribbon cutting on that one too, how about that? All right, thank you so much. Anyone else? All right, thank you. The next item we have is citizens' comments, and this is where anyone who wishes to can come address the board. You have 3 minutes, and our city clerk will keep time. So if you would, when you come up, if you would just state your name and ward, if you're in a ward, or name and address, and we will give you that 3 minutes. We typically do not respond back, but if you have questions or something of the board, you certainly can ask them, and we can follow up at some later time. Mr. Turner.
Greetings to me and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. to the board, to the mayor, to the police chief, to the NACP for our safety.
Thank you.
To the mayor, the family, want to thank you for making Mom real happy. She'll be 90 years old on the 18th of this month. And she was just happy to see you in the paper, but to see you in person, that it really made her day.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. It's my pleasure.
We have some concerns from the citizens. We hoping that we can get a hand on this race and stuff, because with the football games and stuff, that the thing can really get tragic if we don't have a hand on people that want to raise for kicks. Also, this time of year on allergies and stuff, and we still have the containers that has odor, and sometimes it trigger off people illnesses. For some reason we get these telemarketers give us calls that we are going to be arrested and all that kind of stuff, and it really aggravates the public. Then we seen on our electric bill where we understand the electric bill, we understand the sanitation, but what puzzles us is a landfill fee that bothers us, and also paperless, going to paperless. You're only giving people that want to embezzle a way of getting away with things, and that just concerns us.
All right, thank you, Mr. Turner. Since the landfill fee's been raised, let me address that. That was something the board passed, and I can't remember exactly when, but it is intended to be a fee that goes strictly to our remediation of the landfill to meet MDEQ requirements. So that is dedicated solely to that particular goal, and it'll be there until we can get the landfill completed and within the concerns and qualifications of MDEQ, and once we do that, that landfill fee should go toward that, and hopefully after that, very shortly after that, it will go away. So thank you, Mr. Turner. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Board of Aldermen. My name is Jessica Hill. I've come before you guys before talking about Starkville, Oktibbeha County Safe House for the Oktibbeha County area. This house will serve as a safe place for Starkville. I submitted my external contribution. I don't know if you all have received that and had the opportunity to review that information. So I ask, this is a question.
Ms. Harden, when did we receive that?
The outside contribution, we received it from her by the deadline was July 1st.
Yeah.
And the outside contribution list had those at one of the work sessions.
Okay, all right, so we did receive it timely? That was,
We received
okay,
it
all right, okay, thank
They
you.
did receive the package.
We did receive it timely, yes, ma'am.
So to elaborate on the $5,000 that I'm requesting, $1,500 for MAD. You guys have seen Starkville Day and the money they raise and the events they have. And one of the things that they're lacking is a children's area to have a jumping gym, face painting. So there's things to do for the adults, but nothing to do for the children. So we've partnered with them to try to help support them along with our cause, because it kind of goes together. So $1,500 will go towards them to purchase things for the children's play, and the other remaining will go towards funding for the safe house. We just want support from the city to know how important this worthy cause is, and it's very important, being a domestic violence survivor myself, just having a resource center where someone can go to get resources from, be able to pick themselves up. We need to be proactive as a city. We are about other things. I really love being here. So that is a very intricate part into our city as well, not to be reactive but proactive about having something like this. So I'm asking you guys to seriously consider this when you review the packet for external contributions. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, anyone else wishing to speak under citizens' comments? Anyone else?
My name's Leah Ellis. I'm a property owner in Ward 5 and Ward 7. And I just wanted to let you know about a safety concern I have with the new turn arrows that are painted on Highway 389 between just before the Highway 82 bypass leading up to the new entrance to the industrial park. They have added a turn lane in there, a middle lane, and when MDOT painted the arrows, it looks like in an attempt to show that as a turn lane all the way through, they've got arrows pointing onto oncoming traffic on-ramps. So like where they spaced it and where they placed them is confusing to people who aren't familiar with the area. There've already been 2 fatalities I know of at that intersection of the people coming off the ramp onto 389. And my family notified MDOT about a month ago, went right after they painted them, but they're still there, and they're there coming up for this weekend when people are out of town. And it just seems like that needs to be addressed. Like, it's confusing. And I've got some pictures if anybody wants to see them later tonight, but that is concerning to us.
Okay, thank you. Would you show your pictures to Mr. Kemp, the younger as opposed to the elder, wherever he is? Oh, there he is. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close it for citizens' comments. And, excuse me, the next item for us will be a public hearing on the tax increment finance, I'm sorry, public appearances. I just jumped right over that. Lots of public things. Okay, public appearance of the Boys and Girls Club. Ms. Cologne. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
It's
It was
okay.
totally inadvertent.
I understand. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for your time. I do believe I've had the pleasure, I know I've had the pleasure of being before this board before, but I don't think I've had a chance to greet you, Alderman Beatty, so thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you and having you all's continuous support in the work that we're doing with the Boys and Girls Club. I've been, as I said before, several of you know our mission is all about impacting the lives of young people to create caring, positive, responsible, productive citizens. And just for those of you who may not be as familiar with how we do this by providing several academic enrichment as well as character enrichment programs in the after-school hours, as well as for an extended 7-week summer program. And we provide programs such as our Smart Girls program that enhances self-esteem for young women who are getting ready to go out into the world. We want them to make good choices with their minds and their bodies as they go out, as well as, Passport to Manhood, one of our premier programs that teaches young men about responsibility and good character so that they're making healthy choices. And we're doing all the things that we can to, help reduce those, very real systems like that school to prison pipeline that we're hearing so much more about now. We also have a career launch program, which is one of the things that we like to do to get our workforce, do our part in getting our workforce ready and ultimately having a positive economic impact on the communities that our young people come from. These are just, some of the pinpoints of the types of programs that Boys and Girls Club has to offer. And, we're really grateful that we have several of the key components that we need to provide quality programs for all 3 communities we serve, now West Point, Columbus, as well as Starkville. However, here in the Starkville community, we noticed that we're missing one key component. We've got a very talented and dedicated staff. We know we've got a strong board that supports us, several members who are here tonight that our ex-B recognize, as well as competent leadership. But our biggest struggle to this night, as I stand before you, is with the facility that we're currently housing our program out of. We were grateful this past year just, to serve 266 youth in Starkville. However, there was 100 youth that we knew we couldn't serve that had called and needed the services, but we just didn't have the capacity to serve them. Our space is just limited, and so we've known this problem now for several years, and just as of this past September in 2018, My board and I, under the leadership of our board chair, Roger Bentinck Smith, we started the process of looking at what options might be available to expanding the facility and the program for Boys and Girls Club. And so in that path, we've had several conversations with community leadership, as well as the mayor, who's extended a lot of her time, as well as Vice Mayor Perkins, Alderman Vaughn. We've kind of pulled on several ears on this board, just asking you guys to, listen to what our needs are and help us come up with ideas for how we can better meet those needs. And in that process, where we found that the program can most adequately serve the youth that we currently see having the need for our services, as well as giving us an opportunity to sort of expand our reach and our mission for reaching those who truly need us the most, we found that Westside Park is the most ideal home for the Boys and Girls Club. And there's several reasons why, and that I'd like to present to you tonight. But just to give you a little bit about the process that we've been on, so back in February, we did go and speak with the county and ask if they would allow us, or if they would approve a community block grant application on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club to create some type of facility that could house the club. And they gave us a unanimous vote in February to pursue that grant. And I'm sure you have a community block grant, so you're familiar with that process. That grant would allow the Boys and Girls Club, or would allow the county up to $600,000 in funding for a building project. And of course, the club would be responsible for raising the match for those funds. Since then, the club has continued to facilitate dialogue with community stakeholders. One such stakeholder is Ms. Allison Bueller, who's here with the Homestead Project, which is one of the programs that operates out of the J.L. King Center. In these conversations, we learned that there was an unfortunate funding cut to one of the programs that was housed out of J.L. King, and for us, that presented an opportunity to provide continued service for the youth that are in Westside Park area by partnering with their program that's providing the adult education piece of the program. And so we've spoken with them at length about what they're doing and how we can work together. We've even reached out to the Taylor family that operates Brick Fire right there in the Westside Park as well, and we've had some extremely healthy dialogue about the potential for growing both our programs and strengthening the services that they offer the youth that are currently in that neighborhood. One of the things that we realized in looking at J.L. King is that as it is now, there are some limitations that would not quite meet the exact need that the Boys and Girls Club would have. And so we did reach out to someone with Briar Jones, and they came out and kind of did a walkthrough with us and gave us an initial assessment of what it would take to just expand the J.L. King Center to meet both the needs of the program that's currently housing it as well as our club. And that estimate was given at about $2.2 million. To expand the J.L. King Center to, meet both programs' needs.
Of that 600,000 CBDG?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just doing the math as you talk.
Okay.
All right.
And I'll be happy. I'm going to come back and answer any questions as well, but feel free to shoot them out as they come up.
Okay.
And so, which just kind of brings me to the numbers and why I'm here today. I know that you guys have so many very worthy causes, several that I know have been won today, and several that have come before you that I'm aware of, and I certainly don't mean to take away anything from the needs that are out there, very real needs that are out there within our community. I simply ask that you guys consider today, as you're looking at your budgeting process for next year, remembering the Boys and Girls Club and the very real lives that we impact in this community. In fact, I just want to do something real quick, if you don't mind. I know that I have a couple people here now that are on behalf of the Boys and Girls Club. If you'll just stand or raise your hand if you are in any way affiliated with the Boys and Girls Club or this project. That you can stand or raise your hand, okay? And I'm gonna ask you to stay, and if there's anybody here who's been connected in any way to the Boys and Girls Club, whether you've had a child, a grandchild, a nephew, cousin, somebody to attend the Boys and Girls Club, if you've ever volunteered at a Boys and Girls Club, if you've ever supported and wrote a check for the Boys and Girls Club, this is the only reason why I asked to make this moment is that I don't care what community you go into, the Boys and Girls Club is a very real and relevant part. You guys can see it. I won't make it stand for the rest of this, but we are such a real and relevant and viable part of every community, and I truly see this project as one that could be sort of a centerpiece for Starkville. You guys have already done so much to support the Boys and Girls Club. In fact, I appreciate you, Alderwoman Sidstrunk, for sharing time with me just to help me understand the budgeting process for the board. And in that conversation, I did share with her House Bill 1515, which is one of the statutes that allows municipalities to donate up to 1/4 meal 2 Boys and Girls Clubs and a couple other organizations, but exclusively 2 Boys and Girls Clubs. And we know, right now, that would be roughly somewhere around 60 to 65,000 that the city could give. And currently, our giving from the city is at 6,000, and we do truly appreciate that, especially right now that we're in such a tight grant funding time. And I saw a hand, so I'll pause.
What was the outside contribution amount by the city?
6,000
And you're saying $250,000,
is what you guys are able to give up to
that's a quarter of 265,000?
annually.
About 60.
And that's possible annually for not just cities, but also counties. And so we know that with such ambitious goals as this one, to try to get this facility done, we're gonna have to request an increase in that support. And so I'm not asking for a commitment tonight, but rather just to, ask that you consider us in your budgeting process and really to just be here to take your questions and concerns.
Okay, thank you so much. Do you have any question, Mr. Carver?
Y'all might, go ahead.
I'd like to start, we have had an opportunity to talk, and it is late in the process this year as far as requesting additional funds. We had set our budget. We did not increase our outside contributions to anybody, including the Boys and Girls Clubs. But as we talked, it's a great opportunity for us to use this upcoming year to begin to plan what the city can do or might do going forward. Your CDBG grant application won't happen until
May of 2020 is what this current board approved for the process.
So that's 9 months from now.
Right.
We'll be in the middle of a budget process for fiscal year 21
Right.
at that point, and it makes a lot of sense to use this time in planning and seeing where we can help, see what the county can also help. We also talked about the opportunity when y'all vacate your other building and go to a new home, that those rent payments and repairs and maintenance, which are not insignificant, become a revenue stream for a new building.
You'll
So
just know that, and to your point, thank you. We did discuss that as a possibility in my question to you and to anyone else who is here that might know. We don't have a temporary sort of home that could serve us in that in-between time. So as we stand right now, we're still housed out of Lynn Lane and will be until this process starts.
Until you move, yes.
Alderman Carver?
Well, first of all, before we get into this, thank y'all for what y'all do, and anybody that's been involved in the Boys and Girls Club. There was a comment Friday, and I just want to say this publicly, and then I guess it'll be a question for the city attorney. The mayor had possibly discussed using some of the Cornerstone referendum vote money for something related to Boys and Girls Club, and that comment was said Friday.
Yeah, I said it was the bond funds. We're passing the park bond funds at the level of $25 million, and if at some point in time there may be an opportunity, that would be I think that would be hugely beneficial to our community as a whole if there was an opportunity for us to either match the county's 600 or perhaps preserve a portion of that, but of course that still leaves you a whole lot that you'd have to raise.
We've got to raise that and roll our
But
sleeves for sure.
I do think that is an option. It's city property, it's park property. It is certainly something that would fall well within our park bond funds obligations.
And if I could jump in the middle there, by next spring, when you're getting ready to do your CDBG grant application, we will have a much firmer grip on what of those fees that 72% of our population voted to, our voters voted to support.
74, but that's okay.
74%. We'll have a much greater understanding of how much of those will be needed for the parks improvements that we have planned and other park-related expenses. So it's an opportunity, again, to use this coming year to get our hands around all of this and figure out what we can do.
And I say that the only negative I see out of that is that what I hear is people, didn't vote on the Boys and Girls Club. That wasn't brought up in the referendum. That was just a part, and that's kind of, I guess my question would be for the city attorney. I know it said the baseball complex and park improvements. At this point, can this board divvy up funds however they see fit, even if it wasn't listed on the referendum as something listed?
It covers under that phrase, and park improvements, and the resolution of intent that's before you tonight defines the purpose very broadly to include any type of park facility, so it would be an allowable purpose under the bonds.
So it can be anything housed on side of city property, or does it have to be park specific? Or
Has to be parks related.
Okay.
And
does
we
this-
wouldn't be giving it to them, we'd just be, you know, building a building that would
Enhancing.
serve the community as a whole,
Oh, yeah.
and then they would be paying rent. So that building would still remain the city's building, to which we could do, you know, whatever over the number of years that it would survive.
Yeah, it was just new to me Friday. That's why I asked you
It
that
was
comment.
just a
'cause I knew
throwaway
you were
comment,
thinking something,
Alderman.
And you know, usually what my understanding is the public didn't know, you know, Boys and Girls Club wasn't actually on the referendum. However, if the city attorney is saying, at this point, up to 25 million we can spend on anything parks related, yes, okay.
Well, the best way to answer that is, I think they have to go toward Cornerstone, but among that 25 million, if there's funds available, certainly they can be spread across all the parks.
Because we're going to do McKee, we'll do the Sportsplex.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, and I didn't see it as a conflict. And again, I was just throwing it out there as, gee, you know, that may be something that would make a big difference in the
Oh, no,
community.
no, I understand that, but the public would need to know that at this point.
Oh, of
it's,
course.
It's gone from, I like to ask numbers, and I heard 18, 19, 20 million to possibly could be 25 million spent, and all the projects could possibly not be listed as of today. There could be new additional projects that, I just want everybody to understand, and that's my understanding, and I've been asked that question, so I want to take the time to say that there could be even in the future, in the next few months, even additional projects added. And nothing wrong with that, but we need to understand the dynamics of the conversation, so, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Anyone,
May I tag that, Mayor?
Attorney Latimer, certainly.
And Alderman Carver, the key to defining the scope of the expenditures is the resolution directing issuance of the bond funds. This is the resolution of intent, so the category is defined as broadly as possible. If it's the board's will to narrow the category, then you can add that language into the resolution directing issuance, which will come 30 days after tonight's resolution, if the board passes this resolution.
Okay.
So it's y'all's call.
And any bond issuance will come back to the board for approval, and we'll have an opportunity for input at that point in time. The notice of intent that we have tonight just lays out the maximums and the general purpose, and it's very broadly written so that we know what the edges are, and we'll color as close to the edges as money will allow us. But we've got a lot of things that we still have to sort out with Cornerstone and our other parks improvements before we will know what those dollars are.
Yeah. And those absolutely will come first. I mean, that's what we did it for in the first place. But, you know, when you have something that is still park-related, that'd be beneficial to the community, that's the whole goal for the parks. So anyway, that was kind of it was one of my, you know, gee, I thought it and I tossed it out there, and I probably shouldn't have done that. But anyway.
So it
All right.
sounds like the best thing is to see on your CDBG grant funding, and then that'll be coinciding perfectly with our budget next year.
So if I may respectfully ask one last question, when and how might be the best way to follow up with this board on?
I would say we had a couple instances this year when people came in too late in the process in the budget cycle.
And I don't
I
want
would
to
ask Alderman Sistrunk exactly the perfect time to come before, and we think earliest July.
I was going to say, it is never too early to start. So I would be getting your ducks in a row for that CDBG application, and stay in touch through the mayor, any of us that you want to, but be sure that whoever you're in touch with communicates with the rest of us. Stay in touch, I would recommend, through the mayor, about how we can support that application and what we might do in our next budget cycle. And we would probably need to start, if we were going to potentially levy $0.25 probably need to start having that conversation in April or May,
That's
just
what I
to
need to know.
not have anybody be surprised.
Gotcha.
Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your support and time.
Thank you.
All right, and next we have Dr. Regina Hyatt, who is representing MSU and the 2% budget that they do every year. So we appreciate you being here, sharing information with us.
Good
Joel, can you
evening,
roll?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Alderpersons, Chief. Good to be with y'all tonight, as always. It's really my honor to be able to introduce to you all our student body president for this year, Mr. Jake Manning. And Jake is going to walk you through this year's budget request. Thank you.
again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board of Aldermen, thank you for having us. Also, thank you for your continued support of the students at Mississippi State University. The funds that y'all give us through this allocation would not be possible through any other means, and we also try to use them in a way that not only enriches student life at Mississippi State, but also enriches life here in the community with things like the Lyceum Series, Bulldog Bash. We have music festivals, cultural events, interesting speakers that we would not be able to get to Starkville through any other means. So thank you for giving us these funds. This year, the only difference is we moved $15,000 from Cowbell Cabs to Music Maker Productions, and that is simply because we have $20,000 of additional funding through the university, which is only a one-time deal, so next year it will revert back. But we did not need the full $20,000 for Cowbell Cabs this year, so that's the only difference.
Okay, and you budgeted flat, I'm seeing 450 across?
Yes, as you know, each year we try to assess what our collections will be, and we have in the past over allocated because we've had some income that was not expected, which is great news because it means Starkville is growing and continuing to grow. So this year we remained flat. We'll reassess again next year to determine what our collections might look like. This past year, our receipts were $439,000, a little bit more. We allocated $450,000, so we like to have our receipts catch up with our allocations before we allocate additional funds.
And you had an ending fund balance
Of $29,000 and $410.
Okay.
We have a couple of accounts receivables that have not yet come in as well.
Okay. Okay, all right.
I would like to, if I may, Mayor, make a comment about Bulldog Bash. We are so appreciative of your approval of our event, and as always, it is a wonderful event for Starkville. We do, as Attorney Latimer knows, sometimes have challenges in facilitating our insurance process, and your requirements expect that insurance to be resolved in a more advanced timeline than what is typical for artists, agencies, and insurance companies to complete. So our goal is that that insurance certificate will be to you no later than 2 weeks in advance of our event, and that's our full expectation that that will happen this year, and we are in the final stages of those documents now. So my apologies that that has not been produced, but this is very typical for our procedures, and regretfully, we cannot make the process happen any faster than it already is.
Okay, well, I know that last year, I think it was, the insurance was received on the 21st and Bulldog Bash was the 28th, so that was 7 days, which is cutting it pretty close.
It is cutting it close, and we're trying to do better.
Okay, and it's on the 20th this year, so, okay, the Bulldog Bash is on the 20th this year. And so you have an expectation that we'll get it 2 weeks out?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Yes, this Friday, yes. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor, did I see your hand?
Yes, ma'am, Mayor. Mr. Attorney, I'm glad she brought that up. I was not going to say anything unless she had not commented on the insurance, and I'm sure that is articulated to all of the board-approved special event holders. The motion that was passed by the board back on the 4th day of June of 2019 that was approved on the 4th, affirmative, 2 nays, and 1 absent, required the insurance to be approved and tendered to the city by September 1, 2019. And so I think, just as a matter of, we speak through our minutes, and if our minutes not complied with, there's a violation. So I think that needs to be articulated in the future to make sure there's compliance, because last year they got 7 days out. Just want to highlight that point. I was not going to raise that, but since she mentioned insurance, and if you go back and take a look at the minutes on June 4, 2019, it required the insurance to be produced by September 1, and we have not received it by that date. So that, the event holders need to be sure that they fully comply with our rules and regulations, because the city is not charging them anything, or any organization per se.
I agree.
I yield the floor, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you so much. Any other questions from the board? Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Looking forward to it. I'm sorry, Alderman Beatty. You're shielded by Ms. Harden.
Concur with our limits of coverage on that liability policy, special events liability policy.
I'm sorry, say again?
The limits of coverage that they provide is concurrent with what our limits of coverage are on our GL policy.
You know, we hadn't seen their certificate yet, but technically, or as the past would have it, they not only concur, but they exceed what our limits are.
And they showed us additional Shrek County.
Correct.
All right, thank you so much, appreciate it. Congratulations on your presidency. All right, next item. Now I can go to the public hearing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we have a public hearing on the tax increment financing plan for Garin Manufacturing Redevelopment Project. Do we have any discussion from the board before we go into that public hearing? Okay, seeing none, if anyone in the public would like to come make any comments toward this tax increment financing plan that is associated with the Garin Manufacturing property and project on Highway 12, now would be the time. Anyone wish to come forward, speak either for or against? If you would, give your name.
My name is Richard Mullinax from Ward 5. And gosh, I look at this group, it's been 10 years since I've been here. So a lot of new faces. As I look at this group from the audience, I see only two people who see that I think have business backgrounds. I may be wrong. If I am, correct me. And that would be the mayor and Alderman Beatty. And I wonder if it would be helpful. I did run this off today, if y'all would like a copy of it. And what this is about, and it's titled, "The Demise of the TIF-Funded Redevelopment in California." I'm sure most of y'all know right now that California has a moratorium on TIFs. And, what? Oh, I thought you were coming to get me.
No, that'll be later.
I think if you read this article by two professors at the University of Southern California, I don't like their football team, but they're very good in academics. One is a lawyer, and another is an accountant. And I think if I were to vote for this now, and I'd go home tonight and read this, I would say, "My God, you mean I voted for that?" Same links will take you to Illinois, and they've had some real good things up there going on, as you well know. I think Richard Daley at one time had $550 million in TIF money, and he blew it. Rob Emanuel had $50,000. I mean, $50 million, and that was for redevelopment. He redeveloped a pier. So that's the way the politics of TIF goes sometimes. I know y'all won't do that. But I look at Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and Arizona. They're in trouble. They're anti-TIF right now. You can go to the website and read this. And it seems like that sometimes I think we're not very fast learners. If other people who have been involved in it, in California since the 50s, late 40s and 50s, and they decided to get out of it because they have billions of dollars, that's B with a billion, owed to them, but they just said, enough's enough. I look at some of these stores coming in. I had to call my wife today, who's in Salt Lake City, and I had to ask her what an Aldi store was. And she explained it to me. I think I understand it. How many of y'all have ever been to an Aldi store? Anybody in here? Anybody? Okay, one. And the rest of you get to go vote for an Aldi store just for the, don't even know what it is.
I know exactly what it is. I researched it first.
Okay, that's two then. So I look at some of these stores like Aldi, TJ Maxx. If they would have come to Starkville, they would have come to Starkville, whether they get TIF money or not. I looked at all the stores who came in, the hours came in. What they do, they put stuff on the shelves and they sold it, paid taxes for it. And you could go on and on and on and on about the number of companies here who started without any tax money, any incentive money. They came in, they did it themselves, and they made money, and they started paying taxes. Now here we go. If somebody would, I think right now that Starkville is growing, Mississippi State's growing, and if a company wants to come here, they're really going to come here whether they get TIF money or not. And I feel like that sometimes that we're just begging people to come and, come here. I don't think we have to beg people to come here. I think probably a lot of folks lined up to come here. Another thing I've read about, heard about, this so-called $42 million leakage that's going out from these small towns around that's being spent in groceries and so on, and we're losing that. Well, if we have all these stores and all these TIF programs, what's going to happen? These little stores in Macon, Ackerman, Louisville, Matheson, they're going to go under. And we're not in the business, I don't think, of putting other people out of business. Well, what the real joke is to me, I read in the paper, we're going to have 120 to 150 jobs. And what are these jobs going to be? They're going to be 4 hours. Nobody will be working 40 hours a week. Very few people will be working 40 hours a week. No benefits, no medical insurance, no retirement system, no nothing. And most of them will work 40 hours a week. I don't think most of them, probably a very small fraction of that number will be working 40 hours a week. Most of them will be working 38 hours a week, so they don't have, the company doesn't have to pay their benefits. Some of them will be working 4 hours a week, 5 hours a week. And I could cite you one in particular, but I'm not going to do it because I'm here in a public place. They may not appreciate it. But they were supposed to hire 100 people. Well, I'll tell you what, there's no more than 100 employees at this particular store than anything. And this thing about bringing jobs, it might be fine for a kid to work there as opposed to McDonald's. And nothing wrong with McDonald's either, don't misunderstand me. But I don't see some of the benefits that we're supposed to be getting from all this. I feel like that, we look at all the pretty pictures and the pie charts and the stats and the figures and all this, and boy, we got to have this group. And TJ Maxx is another one, and I don't know much about TJ, never been in one. And I did look it up on the website, and I don't see they have anything I can live without. And as it's not already here. And I look at this in the paper. I look at the litany. I mean, it goes on and on and on what you're going to do. Why don't you build new buildings? New subdivision. I mean, new places of where you can buy property rather, buy items. Is what I'm trying to say. But it just go. If you look at this, I mean, it's just there's a litany, a whole litany of things are going to be money put into, and I just don't think it's a good idea. And having said that, I'll conclude my remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mullinax. Okay. All right. Anyone else wishing to speak either for or against? And we generally have a limit on this, and I didn't do that, so if you would, please.
I'm going to try to keep mine really short. I did not intend to speak about this particular
Okay.
issue tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And so one thing I have a question is that I think that y'all have already approved a TIF for Mr. Castleberry. Is that correct? Or is
Cotton Mill.
this-
Cotton Mill was a previous TIF for Mr. Castleberry.
Okay. So this is not an additional TIF for Garin specifically?
As far as for Castle Properties on the new development, this is what it is.
Right. I just wanted to clarify because I wanted to make everyone aware of Garin's situation. Garin was purchased in 2002 by Berkshire Hathaway. So they're owned by Warren Buffett, a billionaire, one of the richest men in the world. So I don't think it would be fair when we have local, like Safe Haven and Boys and Girls Clubs, people that live in our community, pay taxes in our community, begging for money. They desperately need money, and we offer huge amounts of tax incentives to people who, compared to our local population, don't really need it. So I just wanted to make sure that Berkshire Hathaway wasn't getting a $3 million TIF itself. And then I wanted to mention the fact that they're moving out supposedly to the industrial park, to a portion of the park that Mr. Higgins says doesn't need the M1 manufacturing zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I just wanted to go on the record as saying that that's the largest portion, largest plot out there. And they're moving out there without the need for an M1 zone. And my opinion is that it could have all been left zoned like it was to begin with. The city wouldn't have a lawsuit. It wouldn't be necessary. I mean, he also stated that the other lots up in the hills aren't suitable for industrial. So it just, it's just hard to understand how the whole process.
I understand. This is about the TIF, though. This is not about the industrial park, so.
Correct.
Okay.
Are my 3 minutes up?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, well, no, it was a.
Okay, so they were for.
We generally have a longer time for public hearing, and it was my bad for not stating so. So if you have anything else you want to say, you're welcome to do so, but this is about the Garin property, not the TIF. I mean, not the industrial park. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close it as a public hearing.
Mayor,
Mr. Beatty.
just a couple of comments. And I appreciate Dr. Mullinax for taking time and doing the research that you did in light of some people in the room about tax increment finance. And the thing I want to just reiterate is that tax increment finance was created in the state of California, I think originally back in the 1950s, to get developers to go in to big cities, blighted areas of big cities, and develop where otherwise you couldn't get anybody to go in and invest money. But what's happened in the United States over time is it's become popular to go in prosperous places like here, I don't know, all in Alabama, where go into prosperous towns and convince local city governments there to create TIF zones, tax increment financing zones, and incentivize retail development, to build shopping centers, retail developments, and I guess some other hotels, things like that. And I guess my thought on that is, and I may be old school about this, but I've always thought that things ought to stand on their own. You know, that the numbers ought to work. And that, I mean, as much as I like Castle Properties, Mark Castleberry, and other people that spend their money developing in the city of Starkville, I think that and the car dealership and all these retail developments that have gotten tax increment financing, some of them might have needed, maybe this one does, I don't know. We won't know because we granted a substantial number of TIF incentives, Academy Sports. We won't know whether they would have come anyway. We know Walmart came. When we denied Walmart that TIF, within 30 days they got a permit for the store. And we're capturing all the sales tax and property tax off of Walmart. We came that close to granting him a $1.4, $1.5 million tip. The grocery sales figure that's been thrown out about how much we're bleeding grocery sales. If you closed every grocery, our retail market doesn't go east and it doesn't go north. You go east, you get Columbus pretty quick. Their retail market. You go north and northeast, you get Westport pretty quick. So we're not going to draw off those two retail markets. There's two Walmart supercenters in those towns that establish those retail markets, and people are not going to turn and come here when they go into those cities and shopping when there's those patterns already set. So we're not going to be gaining grocery stores. Walmart didn't put that store out there, that neighborhood market out on Highway 12 with the intent of pulling people down from West Point or over from Columbus. That's a zero sum for them. They get the business of those two supercenters, those two towns. But where we do draw is out of these little towns west and southwest of us, Ireton, Madison, Cole, up northwest of us, Houston. We draw people in from those places on a regular basis to shop. If you shut all the grocery stores down, I've got a strip shopping center. I know what small town grocery stores do in retail sales. If you shut every grocery store down in every one of those towns, you'd have like $45 million worth of retail grocery sales. So when these companies do these retail market studies that tell you you're bleeding $45 million worth of grocery sales to somebody, you're not capturing that. What they mean is if there were no stores within a 35-mile radius of Starkville, where there's 4, 5, or 6 now, 5 or 6 now, and you captured all of that, and people drove 35 miles from those towns into Starkville to buy their groceries every week. Yep, we'd be grabbing 100% of our potential grocery sales. I'm like Dr. Mullins. I don't think we need to be in the, if I lived in Akron, I'd be glad to have a grocery store there. If I lived in Madison, I'd be glad to have one there. Forest got a grocery store. Houston got 2 grocery stores because it's not a Walmart supercenter. But I'm just saying, that's where a lot of those figures for that grocery sale is coming from. And, it's not like it's just leaving here, going somewhere else to shop. It's not. It's what we're not capturing. What we're not capturing is the folks that got in at the IGA store, the Piggly Wiggly store in Madison or Akron. The other thing, I guess I'll harp on this again a little bit, is that I don't think we need to incentivize retail development here. This is a Southeastern Conference college town. There's only 14 of them in the country. This is the Blitz conference in the country, and everybody wants to come here. Starkville didn't used to be just what Discovery, it's Discovery now. And everybody wants to come here and get a piece of the action, wants to be part of the action here and build something and make a lot of money. And I want to come here and make a lot of money, build something and make a lot of money, not just at the expense of the taxpayers of the city of Starkville. I think that what we do, and I'll say this again, we're picking and choosing who we want to be winners and losers in this deal. Not losers, who we want to incentivize. We incentivize one development, and the next guy down the road, like the Bowles out of Louisville, came in here, leased a 65, 70,000 square foot grocery store, went into business, got on tax road. We've been catching the taxes ever since. They didn't ask for the tax incentive. So we're picking and choosing. It's an unlevel playing field. And I guess if all that business, that the shopping center that we're proposed shops, if all that's brand new business, good for us. That's new business that comes in town and stir around. But if those stores pull off of existing businesses, they're likely going to pull off of existing businesses that are on the tax rolls that we're getting property tax, ad valorem tax from, and sales tax from. And that's going to move from one that we're getting tax on to one we're not going to get tax on. We're only going to be part of the sales tax. The other thing I would just say is Garen, this thing, when Garen moved, and I'm proud to have Garen have jobs and things. They probably had 500 jobs at one time to start with. They got 80, maybe as many as 100 jobs now. They had 500, 600 jobs at one time. This is a parallel move. We're going to build a new plant for them, or basically they're going to be paid to build a new plant and use bond money and assistance out there. And I don't think they're guaranteeing a single new job. I think they're going to guarantee 75 jobs for something like 5 years or something. So it's not like they're going to create 50 or 100 or 150 new industrial jobs. They're not going to do it. So I just want us to go in this thing, and every one of these new projects is going to come down the pipe, because everybody else is looking at what happened on this, and they're taking notes. And when all these new ones come down the pipe, we need to realize what we're doing when we start granting tax incentives to retail developments. Another thing is they're not industries. These are not industrial jobs. These are not jobs that are going to create living, what they pay people a living wage and benefits and things like that. There's a difference. And I know retail development likes to sell themselves on the same level as industrial development, industrial jobs. They are not. It's two different things. But anyway, that's my 2 cents.
All right, thank you, Alderman Beatty. Anyone else wanting to speak to this particular issue? All right. We will close this public hearing portion related to this TIF financing, and we will move to the second public hearing on the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget and tax millage for the city of Starkville. Alderman Sistrunk, would you like to discuss this before we open it for a public hearing?
I would. I'd like to just give a little bit of history of how we got to the point of thinking that we need a tax increase and what that tax increase would be used for. Each year we go through this process of projecting what we think our revenues and our expenditures are going to be for the coming year, and we make a decision about whether we can fully fund everything within that or whether we're going to need to expand our revenues. The only place for expanding revenues that we have falls under the property tax, the millage rate that we assess each year. This year we did have quite a few new revenues, a good bit of new money. Unfortunately, that new money was eaten up with things that we have to pay and we don't have any real control over. Our health insurance has gone up $130,000. Our PERS contributions have gone up $195,000. We are trying to adequately budget for overtime for particularly police and fire. They're our two biggest general fund departments, but there are also departments that have overtime that's linked to some extent to things that we do to ourselves because we can't retain officers and firemen. Our productivity goes down, and the number of officers that we have available to do policing or firemen to respond to their emergencies are not there. And so we pull people in, and rather than paying them at their normal rates, we wind up paying overtime rates. And those, we've seen those numbers grow. And this year we're trying to adequately budget for the reality of being understaffed frequently. Once we've adopted a budget, set a millage rate and adopted a budget, that's not the end of it. We continue to look at that and monitor our revenue projections and our expenditures through the year. And you can ask Chief Nichols, Chief Yarborough, Mr. Kemp, Mr. Ware, any of them. We have those meetings and we talk about, are you staying on budget with the part that you can control, your expenditures? So we manage as best we can our monies. This year, when everything was said and done, the things that our departments requested that would be new items, there was no money for them. And so if we want to move forward with those new requests, that means that we would be looking at a tax increase. And what we have proposed.
Alderman Sistrunk, I've got.
It's up there. Okay.
Yes,
I was
Mr.
trying to
Clements
put
has
it here
pulled it
so I
up
could
on the
read.
board, so I wanted you to have that.
So what we have proposed that are new expenditures are mostly going to fall into the public health and safety category, some under infrastructure. But we are proposing to hire 2 new firemen, which allows us to finally and fully staff Fire Station 5. 10 years we've been trying to get that station staffed, and this would finally get there. That comes with the ability to apply to be re-rated, which would be a benefit to some of our residents and some of our businesses in their insurance premiums. It's difficult to know. That's a case-by-case business, but it's difficult to know. We are trying to add another code enforcement personnel person. Everybody from Alderman Carver down to Alderman Vaughn knows that we have code enforcement issues that we just don't have the staff to deal with, and it ends up with us not being able to properly provide that level of service to our community. In talking with Mr. Coleman and the police department. We have a need for additional security cameras around town. We have a need for additional storage, particularly as we're going to more video storage. We need more data storage capability. We need to do things to make sure that we are safe, or as safe as possible, from ransomware attacks, which fall under that category of you can stay in front of it or you can pay it once you're hacked and your system and your city is shut down from a computer process. Mr. Kemp in the streets department asked if we can buy a new truck that is used for patching potholes, the one that allows us to take hot mix out to patch potholes. The one we have is old and I believe is held together with baling wire and twine. It just doesn't function, and at some point, if we're going to patch potholes, we're going to have to make an investment in that equipment. The police had asked about buying a new fingerprint machine. The one that we have is either so old or that it's obsolete, or we're about to be the point where we can't get supplies for it anymore. They are applying for a grant for it, and if so, that will allow us to use those dollars for something else. We also would like to address our compensation package among our employees. Our employees are our biggest expense, our greatest resource. I say that all the time, but we have coming up later tonight a presentation about what that would look like, but it is critical if we're going to be able to recruit and retain employees that we pay a decent starting salary for our laborers, that we're paying our policemen competitively, that we're paying our firemen competitively, that although this is not a general fund account, our utilities linemen are paid at a competitive rate. And when we don't have those people, we pay for that in other ways, whether it's overtime, additional training costs because we're trying to get new people in and up to speed, a draw on productivity for our other staff because they're having to stop and help a new employee. It costs us one way or the other. We added all those things up, and it comes to a requirement of just under $400,000 of new money, and that new money would come in the form of a tax increase. 1.5 mils is what's proposed, and it is a tax, and that's a word that has gotten a really ugly connotation in government, and I'm not quite sure where we got away from the idea that if we want services, we have to pay for them. But as it works out, a 1.5% millage increase would be roughly a 1% increase in anybody's overall tax bill. So if your tax bill that you write your check in December, January, February is about $1,000, this millage increase would add about $10 to that. If you write a check for $5,000, this would add about $50 to that. If your check is $10,000, we're starting to get into rarefied levels that I can't identify with. That would be $100. If you pay $100,000 in taxes, and that's a lot of money to pay in your overall tax bill, it would cause you to have to pay about another $1,000 in taxes. So if at each of those breaks, those are meaningful dollars. $10 means something to me, 50 or 100 means something to me. But for most of it, it is not a make or break situation. A business where $100 or $500 or $1,000 is the difference between them staying in business and not being in business has other problems that can't be laid at the foot of a tax increase. So anyway, if we wish to provide these additional services, not the least of which is the payroll increase, the new firemen, the new security cameras and IT support for our infrastructure, our information technology infrastructure, for pothole repair, it's going to take a tax increase. We're going to talk about that with this public hearing. Later, we're going to talk about our actual budget, and we're going to talk about the HR compensation package that Mr. Ashford has put together. These are all very interrelated, and I just want us to be sure that we all recognize that we do not do one of them in a vacuum. And I'm going to put Ms. Harden on the spot and ask her if the board said we wish to do one of these things without a tax increase, is there money available to do these things in our current budget?
It will be up to the board to go through the budget and see what would have to be eliminated or reduced in other lines, but there is not a line of undesignated money expense to the budget.
So it is a trade-off. If we want to do some of those things, we have to figure out something else that we want to eliminate if we're going to try to do it without a tax increase. So with that, Mayor, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, anyone else on the board wish to speak to it before we go into a public hearing? Alderman Bailey.
I went to Department of Revenue, Mississippi Department of Revenue this afternoon. It's public information. Pulled up the applicable tax rates for cities in Mississippi. You can look it up, all of it. And looked at 20 cities in the state that range in population from about, 16,000 up to about 50,000 population, of which Wichita kind of falls in the middle, low middle. Natchez, Cleveland, South Haven, Hattiesburg, Grenada, Gulfport, Clinton, Pascagoula, Laurel, Oxford, Meridian, Tupelo, Greenwood, Brookhaven, Madison. Of course, I didn't add it, but Macomb, Pearl, Brandon. The average millage rate for those 20 cities is approximately 43.75 million.
How much?
43.75.
43.75?
Yes.
And we're at 26.63. I'm sorry, anything further, Alderman Beatty?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, and let me say.
I will say this, that there are 5, 6 what we call rock star cities, Mississippi, South Haven, Hattiesburg, Gulfport, Oxford, Tupelo, Madison, and their average, those 6 cities is 37.23 mils.
Okay, thank you. And ours, again, let me say it a little bit louder, is 26.6.
And Oxford millage rate's 31 mils.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else before we open it as a public hearing?
And I'd just
Alderman
like to
Sistrunk.
say that you do see the difference in those millage rates. When you go to those other towns, you see the difference in those millage rates. If we had 5 more mills like Oxford, that would be about $1.2 million, $1.3 million, and we would be fixing streets right and left, making other improvements throughout town. But this again comes back to, if we want things, ultimately somebody has to pay for them.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, I will, at this point, and let me be a little clearer, generally we will have public hearings and we allow about 30 minutes, 15 for pro and 15 for con. So having misdone my duty last time, let me say that. And so anyone wishing to speak in favor, you're welcome to come forward now, or against, you're welcome to come forward now, and we will time all of that. So if anyone wishes to come forward to speak regarding the tax increase or the.
Chris Taylor, Ward 7. I have a question. He mentioned what our tax base was. How about as you add the county and the school? Are we still under those major cities you called out?
We would be in the middle of the pack.
In the middle of the pack, what that mean? In the middle. But, you know, I was listening to the Friday work section, and I heard the mayor ask the HR director, how many personnel are we losing monthly? I mean, you know, yearly or whatever. And he said approximately 25%. Now, in order for us to keep those people, we need to at least give them a raise. And like she said, in order to give them a raise, we have to increase taxes. Now, I'm paying taxes on 3 properties here in Starkville. So with that small percentage, I wouldn't mind. That's just me personally. I can't speak for no one else. But me personally, in order to keep the good people here, and you didn't list sanitation. I heard him just say police and fire. But he did not say sanitation. And sanitation, it seemed like every 2 weeks, is sanitation introducing someone new. So I would be willing to accept that pay raise. But like I said, I'm paying one in my name, but I'm paying for 3 here in the city. So with that small amount, in order to keep the service or the people working, let's give them a pay raise.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else, either for or against? All right, thank you very much. We'll close it as a public hearing. Anyone else on the board wishing to have any discussion about this? Anyone? Okay, well, I'm going to take the opportunity then. Joel, would you go back to that? You jumped away from me, didn't you?
She just closed it.
All right, yeah, that's the one I want right there. And if you will look up there, well, I think the heading says obligated versus discretionary. And I'll be honest with you, I don't happen to think that equipping our police with additional cameras is discretionary. I think it's one of those things that is mandatory from my perspective. I believe that the security cameras have been a huge boon to us. I think the police department would be delighted to have a number of them, as would IT. I think they are highly beneficial to our future, and I think we need to focus on getting more of them. I think our hot mix truck, every one of us up here sees potholes that we want to fill, and I constantly get calls from both aldermen and the public about filling potholes, and that asphalt hot mix machine, I believe, is like 20-something years old and is on its last legs. And some days it doesn't work more than it does. Under the police department, that fingerprint machine, we are far enough behind that we cannot communicate with NCIC, is that right, or whatever those letters are, NCIC? So I don't see that as discretionary either. The code enforcement officer, I absolutely believe that code enforcement is a critical piece of our community and how we make sure that our community looks good, that the grass is cut, that the dilapidated houses come down, that we are managing the beautification element of our community as well as the safety and health of our community. I certainly know that I talk to board members on a regular basis about code enforcement matters, and having a second person to me is not discretionary in that sense. As it relates to the fire department, 2 more firefighters would put us headed toward a Class 3, which would put us in a category that is in rarefied air in Mississippi. Not so much so in the South, as Alderman Beatty is very aware of and very skilled and expertise in knowing about those numbers. I don't see that as a discretionary amount. And those pay changes are absolutely not discretionary. If we want to keep our people and we want to make sure that our people are happy working for us, they are our greatest asset. And I think at the very minimum, we should be in the 90 to 95 percentile that Mr. Ashford has represented related to the salary survey that he presented to us on Friday. So from my perspective, I don't see any of those as discretionary. I see them as our future, and I think our future is important enough that $1.5 million is not too much to ask. So let me say now that I think this is an extremely important vote. If we choose to take action this evening, I think this is an extremely important thing for us to focus on, is that the organic growth that we have gotten by virtue of adding buildings and businesses and residential construction here in town has been eaten up. As it was said, it's eaten up by PERS, it's eaten up by medical increases, and those things can't be made up. So we have had a huge amount of progress in this city for a large number of years. We are a place that people want to be, as Alderman Beatty has said, as Mr. Mullinax, Dr. Mullinax, has said, and we want to keep going down that path, and that's going to require us to pay attention to the details that we have not in the past, I think, paid as much attention to, and I think the path we're on now is the path we should stay on. So that having said that, we've closed it as a public hearing. Anybody wish to say anything? Okay.
I got a few things.
I'm sorry, Alderman Carver.
The way I like to do this is just to take notes throughout the weeks and then kind of give comments. And mine are, there's a lot of different factors into this. It seems like no matter, even on these, I have at times voted for slight tax increases, and I've been questioned about that, and at times I haven't. And this is a year I don't really think this necessitates a tax increase. A couple things that play into this is, one is this building we're sitting in, lobbied against it, even though it's a nice, fancy building that comes with a price tag. I've heard 18 to 20 million. We could have gotten Cadence down down the road for 2.5. It's a $9 million building, but go ahead. But what that does, I'm just saying, remember, this pie is a certain size, and it can be divvied up and sliced up anyway. And so, you know, if you were going to ask, one thing I would champion for this year would be employee comparable rates. I had a couple sanitation workers at my house this weekend, and they stopped by just for the fact of they had, I guess y'all have had some discussions down there, and just how hard it is to live on some of the wages that these gentlemen and ladies live on, and I do understand that argument. That would be the one thing if I would have to pull out of this and say that something that's, it's time to really push for our employees and their pay raises. One thing it seems though, and I've asked this, you weren't at the work session Friday and the time I asked before, but there is a big deficit seems to be within the police department. I asked that, it's around $600,000, and I know every time that our court system comes up and does a presentation, and I didn't know, I think that was a question I asked was, is it through a community policing? Is there something that's a personnel issue or something? But it seems to me, and this is just the math I came up with this year, that it seems that we need around 400 some odd thousand to balance the budget, and just that one department. It would be the same with any enterprise department or anything. I would ask, you know, what's going on and why such a drastic decrease in the revenue stream. And you don't want to look at the police department as a revenue stream, but at the same time it is for the city. And I don't know what's going on, and if Chief, if you want to get up and answer that question, and if you want to come up with percentages or something and tell us kind of why it's down and what's going on.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, Alderman Carver, to answer your question, I think it's a mixture of quite a few things. Tickets were down. We've tripled the tickets. So you can't say it's tickets. Then we said it was fines. Well, we got a new judge, and he came in and changed all the rules. So now it doesn't matter. You can only sit in jail a couple days, and you're going to let you out. It used to be they sat in there until they pay. But now they're getting out.
Is that like a non-adjudication process, or?
No, it's not a non-adjudication process. It's just that he's just going to let them out. I mean, that's just the law, the way he interprets it. Okay. So I think if you add all those things together, you know, you're looking at why there could be a deficit. And another thing we got to look at, every year, we add a different special events. We're not getting paid for that. The city don't charge for those. But my guys have to get out there and do it. And it's growing every year. You know, you went from a Bulldog Bash to where you had 20,000 people to now you expecting 50, 55,000. So that's everybody in the department working who's not on shift. That's money. You know, and as we said before, you know, we have people quit. You know, they'll go take another job for a dime more. There's no loyalty, I'll say it. You know, so we have to fill those spots. So we have to have people work overtime at time and a half to make sure the shifts are adequately staffed. So, you know, and to be honest with you, we are already behind here in Starkville as far as it goes with police officers, because we only allocated 60. We should be about 80, if you really want to know the truth. Everybody that's come up here tonight said the same thing. Starkville's growing. The university's growing. What the police department ain't. So that means more costs and additional personnel.
So listening to your comments, I would say it seemed like at some point in the near future we need to adjust our special events policy or something instead of just giving away free services. And that's, somebody told me one time when I started looking at I would say roughly 35 to 40 weekends a year, there's something major going on in this town. And it may be on the university, but it's town and gown relationship. So I mean, I would say that the police force has to work overtime, even if it's a ball game on campus, per se. But that's one of those things, if I were to isolate one thing out and pull it out, this year, I'm personally not going to be in favor of tax increase. I think, and I know that we, if it gets voted down this session tonight, that we'll come back and we'll find a solution. It always happens. But it's one of those, we've had tough years, and this is not a tough year. I think we can find a way. Additional security cameras, that's another thing I was going to ask you while I've got you up here. From a cost savings standpoint, does that help your department, or does it, you know, do you have to have additional personnel? I know it's not active monitoring.
I'm not going to say from a cost savings, I can't speak on that. But does it help? Yeah. I know we solved at least one murder case using those cameras, because we were able to track him using those cameras, as well as some of the private citizens' cameras. But without a doubt, they help us in investigative tools.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Y'all got anything else?
Thank you, Alderman Clark.
The
Did you
code
have
and-
something else? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Go right ahead.
I guess I'm talking about the code enforcement officer with a gentleman being out in the office. Have we got somebody temporary in that office?
Yes, we do. We hired Ms. Counterman last time,
That's right.
and she has been working.
I guess my question would be just to let the vote, I guess, to see how the vote is, and then, again, this pie can, and nothing's set in stone with the city, and any service we provide can be adjusted, and I think Mr. Beatty's going to have something to add.
Well,
Oh, let me,
I yield.
that's all right.
I yield. Either way,
I just want to get a clarity on his yielding first, so, okay, Alderman Beatty?
yes. I think you, in somewhat, can equate it to what's going on maybe in the state with tobacco, maybe be realistic about what, our highways get banned. And there's been all this stuff proposed about a nickel or dime on highway tax. And I think if you poll most people out here, they put a nickel on it, so we have good highways. Drive down Meridian on Highway 45. Look, see what the highways get starting to look like in the state. And that's irresponsible. It costs more to think you can have level government, level revenue, or small increases, 2%, 3%, 5%, and keep up with the cost of labor, and the cost of workers' comp, and the cost of materials and things like that. I mean, municipal governments are just like, in a sense, like a business. When the cost of services go up, we do one or two things. We either grow, we pass it along to consumers through a nominal, as small as we can, as reasonable as we can, tax increase, or we go to people and say, okay, we've reached a limit, we'll have to cut back on services. Something's got to give. We can't wave a wand at the municipal level, the county level, state level, and just say, okay, because we're a government entity, that the same laws of economics out there don't apply to us. When things go up, we either have to find a way to raise revenue or get better, more efficient, which I think city municipal governments are pretty efficient in the way they do things, or go to our citizens and say, look, we're at the limit. We're going to have to make a decision. Either we need to pay a little bit more, or we're going to cut back on service, one or the other. I mean, it's just as simple as that. And so, how much does this cost on the house? What you were talking about a while ago? What's the?
It's if you look at your total tax bill, it's about a 1% increase in your total tax bill. Me personally, because I'm an old person and get that additional senior discount, it will wind up costing me about $11. And I have sort of the average house in the city of Starkville. If I were younger and didn't get that senior discount, it would cost me about $22. And I would happily pay it. I would happily pay it to get these things funded for our city. And I have 2 properties that I pay taxes on, so.
Alderman, yeah, you don't want to ask me. Alderman Beatty, did you have anything else?
I was just going to Chief Yard. Can you elaborate a little bit on what good thing would happen if we fully staff that fire station? It's not fully staffed right now. What your conversation with Mississippi State Radio Bureau would be, and tell us something about.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor.
Good afternoon, Chief.
One of the big things with the rain decrease would be a savings of insurance. We don't know exactly how much, just depending on each house. But one of the big things is we have a full staff fire department. That's the main thing, safety. So
we've moved. The Radio Bureau has indicated to you that 1 year from today, we're fully staffed fire station. What was that number right there? Fire station.
Right, 1 year after being fully staffed, after 1 year, we get extra re-rating.
Class 3 fire protection.
Yes, sir.
And as the mayor had indicated, in Mississippi, that puts us in an elite group of fire cities that have. There's only, as I understand, there are no class 1s in Mississippi. There's 1 class 2. Gulfport.
One class 2,
and there are 4 class 3s. Jackson, Biloxi, South Haven, and our sister city, Columbus, just got a class 3.
Right.
So that would put us in a pretty elite group. But in the southeast United U.S., broaden this thing out. In Mississippi, people in Mississippi, we need to do that. We need to look in greater context, how not just we compare with our neighbor up the road 30 miles, but how we compare with Oxford, Alabama, or Murfreesboro, Tennessee, or Macon, Georgia, somewhere like that. Because we compete against those towns for industries and businesses and stuff. But in the southeast, towns our size, 3 is kind of, that's an average range, right?
Right, that's a great range. And another thing we hadn't talked about that came up, we talked about safety, annexation. right now when we annex, if that goes through, what's it gonna put us at? Right now, if we head to Clayton Village, we have to have 3 trucks for a initial fire attack. That leaves 2 trucks in this area to take care of the rest of the city. Right now, in that one shift, which is B shift, we're short one entire station. So we got 3 trucks going on that shift. We got 1 truck in the city for fire protection. So that's another thing. Having those extra personnel are vital to the safety of our personnel, to our firefighters, because we don't do a good job. I'm not going to send our guys into an area where they can be killed or hurt if possible. So having that is also an extra incentive for having the station filled.
Anything else? Well, we do respond now to Clayton Village, right? If something were to happen, because we respond to those volunteer fire departments if they need
call us,
something.
if they
Yeah.
need just minute.
Yes,
Right.
thank you. That was the word I needed. Thank you so much. Yes, mutual aid agreement. Yes. Okay. Alderman Beatty, is that all? Okay. Alderman Carver, I saw your.
No, that's fine, Chief. This is just a quick fact for, I know it's in the lower 20th percentile, it might change, but typically when somebody looks at the tax bill, just let it be noted that the city is quite significantly the smallest percentage of the 3 between county, school, and city. And so I know, Alderman Beatty, you brought up a lot of the cities and then the rock star cities and things like that, but I know you said 37.23 mils between the 5 or 6 that you listed, but we're still, the city has always been significantly lower. I think when you and I came to the board, it was around 19 or 20 mils. 19 and a half. So, but just for somebody, a lot of times we get asked that question that my taxes are so high. Just understand that of the 3 entities within this county, this city is by far the smallest percentage. So, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Alderman Sistrunk, I see your hand again.
And I'd like to say that another reason that people sometimes perceive our taxes to be high is because this is a second home for them, and they don't have homestead exemption here, which means that their tax rate is automatically 50% higher than it would be if it were if they claimed homestead exemption here. And I would also like to say that that there's some idea that there's money in the budget that we could cobble together and do even parts of this without a tax increase. And we cannot. There's not some magic pool of money that we're hiding from you. As we get into the year, we'll true up some of our estimates. We'll also find out that we were wrong on some of our estimates for expenditures. And it is much easier to find $10,000 or $20,000 during the year than it is to find $400,000 for the year. So there's no way to do these things without a tax increase.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Walker.
I appreciate everyone's comments on this matter tonight, and looking at I thought the mayor made a great point of looking about what is obligated and what is discretionary. And in my 5+ years sitting here, operating and fully staffing the fire station has been the can that's got kicked down the road for 10 years. I believe at the end of one of those terms that facility was awarded from a grant, and ever since that time we've been trying to figure out how do you staff it, and at some point you just have to do it, whether we get an improved fire rating or not. Thinking about where the growth is happening, at some point safety is paramount. And I agree. I think it may be an opportune time to have a discussion about how we look at special events, and if there are a certain amount, maybe we do need to try to recoup some of those costs. I think all those are absolutely valid policy questions. But being able to pay our workers a little bit more, if that's going to be a police officer, or we have just 1 or 2 fewer that have to quit a year to go make a little bit more money somewhere else, is one less person that we have to spend another $20,000 or $25,000 just to train them up, so they can go be a police officer in the city of Starkville or somewhere else. I think that is money that is well spent. And I do believe that Alderman Sistrunk is right, is that the city clerk is right, is that there's no single line item where we're going to be able to go cobble this together. Where it's going to come from in the budget, if this isn't approved, I'm not sure. When I look on of what has to be approved. Health insurance, $130,000 we have. And that's with us increasing or maintaining for our workers that are making $10 an hour, as Alderman Vaughn and others would speak to, is with them having a pretty high deductible. Just to try to keep that $130,000 something that's manageable. We get down to that $1,000 deductible, like or $500 or $750 deductible, and then that $130,000 probably turns into pushing $2 in a hurry. So this is a way to try to think about how you look at that. So that's a cost that we don't have much control over. $195,000 is an unfunded mandate from the state of Mississippi. For all those people that worked their whole lives under that system, when they get ready to retire, they're going to have money in that system, and that's an increase that we have to pay for. You know, could we argue that maybe we don't need? Could we hope and cross our fingers and hope that the chief is going to be successful in that grant and getting that $25,000 fingerprint machine? Sure, we could probably hold off and wait right there. But in the big scheme of things, you are talking about nickel and dime stuff, and we probably could look in the budget and find $20,000 somewhere. We can cut my travel a little bit. I don't travel too much as an alderman these days, and so we could find a few $1,000s here and there. But to be able to fund the big stuff, you're going to have to start cutting into some bone. And when you cut into bone, you're talking about some city services that people are accustomed to and that we expect to be better, like the potholes. And, you know, I call the mayor and say, hey, we got a pothole over here. And she talks to Edwin, say the machine's broke or we can't get the hot mix today. And that's not the city engineer's fault. That's not the mayor's fault. It's not the worker that drives the truck's fault. That's our responsibility to make sure that they've got the necessary equipment to go be competitive. You saw when the mayor read the 30 minutes of consented items today, all those materials that we were thinking about finally putting on surplus, the 1993s, the 1995s equipment. At some point in time, it's just like fixing the street. You got to go get new stuff. And unfortunately, things cost more now than they did in 1993. And so we have to be smart. We have to be smart in how we do it. And one of the things in Starkville that has been sort of the mantra is that it's very rare that we raise taxes, which is not a bad thing. I'm totally on board with that. But unfortunately, because there's not that $0.25 that's pretty routine, when it's time to go do something big, you got to jump up to $1.5 million or $2 million just to catch yourself back up. And this $1.5 million just catches us back up a little bit. It pays for some things that we know that we need to pay for our people, to pay from some clearly necessary equipment that's going to help our operations run more smoothly. And then next year, there's going to be another set of asks. There's going to be another set of asks. There's going to be new demands that are going to be out there. And then we're going to have to make a hard decision about how do we live within this, or is it time to think about $0.25 so you don't have to do that 1.5 or 2 mils at a pop. And nobody knows the answer to that. I'm really hopeful. I'm really hopeful that our sales tax projection continues to go up. But I also watched the football game this last weekend. I hope we have 60,000 people in this stadium on Saturday, and they're coming to spend their money in Starkville. We have way less control over what that sales tax number is going to be. We have a lot more control over what that ad valorem tax is going to be. And the more buffer that the city gives ourselves with the control of that ad valorem tax, so we have to make up less on the sales tax, in my opinion, is a move in the right direction. I do believe that we're going to continue to grow our sales tax. I think we're going to win 9 ball games this year, maybe 10. We might compete for our playoff. But none of that is a certainty. And if you look back over time, the influence of Mississippi State athletics has on the revenue generation of sales tax in this town, it is undeniable that it has a major factor. Undeniable. And so for us to not consider how we give ourselves a little more cushion, I believe is we're not doing the citizens that live here the service, the due diligence that we see necessary, just to make sure that we're providing as much cushion as we could possibly provide. I would like for us not to increase taxes this year. I would like for it to be only $0.25 million. But A mill is what, 260, 265 is the estimated value. When you add up that 130 and that 195, you're there pretty quick. There's a mill of it right there. And so you're trying to figure out, what do? We either got to cut the bond, we've either got to cut back on that ending fund balance, where we've put ourselves in a position to have a little bit more money at the end of the year in case the $400,000 hit comes that you weren't expecting, that you can go address that. But for us to not think about it on the front end, I think is something that we all have to consider. However we vote tonight, that's what the vote is. We've got a lot of things. We've got tax increment financing that's going to get a vote tonight. There's principles on one side, and whether you do it or not, all those things, the decisions that we make, all of those things at the end of the day have ripple effects in how we're thinking about what the budget's going to be for long term. So I think this is a vote that is pretty important. If people vote against the tax increase, that's fine. We don't always vote on the same things, and that's okay. But I certainly think that there's good rationale. There's good rationale for why we would be making this decision. And when you look at that, it's primarily our people and the safety and health of our citizens, and providing firemen and police officers and paying them adequately. I think that is an expense that is worth asking a little bit more for the citizens to pay for. We either pay for it now, or we pay for it later. We're fortunate. Last thing I want to say, we're very fortunate in our community to have very few violent crime. We are blessed. I hope we continue to be so fortunate. But when you hear the chief and you look at that number for the cameras, in the grand scheme of things, that's a fairly insignificant cost. And for that camera system to help us solve one major violent crime, I'm not sure you can really put a price tag on that. I think that is absolutely the way to go. And we're talking about the ransom software. Our city is not immune to that. Is that correct, IT director? You have IT director saying that, look, this is a real threat. Everybody gets malware, and you get phishing expeditions on your own home PC every day. This is a major attack on municipalities and city government. And we are unprepared at the moment to have the best defense that we can have for that. You got to spend the money to go protect yourself. The city has to spend the money to protect itself. So I do believe that if we comb through that budget, and we can probably find $25,000, $50,000, maybe even $75,000 of legitimate discussion of where we might be able to cut some things. But I don't know if you're going to be able to come up with $450,000 or $500,000 and say that's where the money's got to come from. So, Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman Walker. Chief, you wanted to share something?
One more thing to answer Alderman Culver's question. I think we forgot about in 2014 when I was appointed Chief of Police. I applied for a Department of Justice grant to get four additional officers. So we got to realize we now paying for those officers ourselves, and so we're looking at the first year. I think they paid like 80%, and it went down every year until last year. We're totally funding all 5 of those officers, and we're talking about $70,000 to $100,000 per officer to outfit them and pay them, as well as all the benefits. So that's where a lot of that money come from, that we're looking at every year.
Well, not so much expenditure, but revenue. You know, the revenue stream, and we could bring up, if you want to bring up the court PowerPoint, I don't mind bringing that slide up, because
Which
I know
one?
it's significantly down. And I know.
I'd like to speak to fines and forfeits as a revenue item.
Hang on just a second. Let me get Joel hunting for whatever it was that Alderman Carver wanted. What was it you wanted?
It was our annual report, either last year's fine. The court system annual report.
Oh, the courts. Oh, he's not going to have access to that. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead, Alderman Sistrom.
I don't want anybody to ever think that we are trying to use our police department as a revenue source. We're not. And we are, I read a really interesting article just this weekend about fines and forfeits as a percentage of revenues. In some towns, it's as much as 80% of their revenues. In Starkville, it's about 3%. And it is down. And I I think that may have something to do with the number of tickets that are written, partly probably because you sometimes don't have as many officers out there, something to do with the courts. But I think the bigger issue is that we recognize those revenues on a collection basis, and until we collect those dollars, we could write everybody here 10 tickets, and it doesn't impact our bottom line a penny until we collect those
That's
tickets.
right.
And there have been some pretty significant changes in what we can do in terms of collection efforts. And then there have also been, throughout the country, a real move toward not using the courts and the fines process as a debtor's prison. There have been 2 or 3 cities here in Mississippi that have had lawsuits brought against them. And so far, Starkville has moved in a direction that keeps that from being an issue for us, but it probably does impact those collections somewhat. But at the end of the day, if I get a ticket and I don't pay it, there's really not, that's gonna, there's, anyway, it's not a revenue source. It certainly doesn't need to be something that we're encouraging the writing of tickets to be a revenue stream. It has gone down, but I think that's as much a function of what we're allowed to do from collections and what we need to be doing with our courts as much as it is anything else, because I do think you're probably writing a similar number of tickets now.
All right, Alderman Carver, I saw your hand, but I'm going to let Mr. Latimer do a little explanation of the issue related to people bonding out in 2 days or getting out in 2 days, because he's intimately familiar with that.
That may be a little bit of an overstatement.
Okay. He's quasi-familiar with that.
Judge Kelly's tenure coincided with several lawsuits across the state brought by the MacArthur Justice Center. Corinth was sued, other municipalities were sued, and they were sued on grounds that municipal courts were a mill to make money and foster debtors' prisons rather than centers of justice. And so it is clearly unconstitutional that you can't lock somebody up for indefinite periods of time if they can't pay. There are reasonable periods of time. I think Judge Kelly's trying to find that line right there. But that is the impetus for the change between the way Judge Kelly does it and the way Judge Favor has done it, is because a bunch of lawsuits were filed where municipalities were not only sued, but they were popped with fines and penalties for doing what they did.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Carver.
So, yeah, obviously it's not a revenue stream, but anytime you get in, police department may write the exact same number of tickets, and this not be really pertaining to your department, but more the court system, but anytime you get into the budget and there's hundreds of thousands of dollars difference on any line item, it will get brought to light. And so, I appreciate you coming up, I respect you and what you've done for our city, but it may be more of a court. I just want to be duly noted to look into that, because, and that's anything with it that's off a few $100,000.
Absolutely.
We need to identify either a positive or a negative, or that may be, city attorney, that may be the answer I'm looking for. But, anything, like I said, that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars different from the previous year, I would like to look into that further.
And if it gives you some comfort level, the city clerk and her staff have been working with the courts department to make sure that we are adequately accounting for all the collections, and that we don't have any process breakdowns or any information that's not getting recorded as it needs to be recorded. So that is being reviewed, and so far we've just not identified hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not being accounted for properly.
Okay, thank you. We have had a lot of discussion down at this end of the table. I am very interested, either Alderman Vaughn, Vice Mayor, either one of you wish to speak to this matter of the budget? All right, I will take that as a no. All right, anyone else? All right, well, then we will move on then to the next item of business, which is consideration of a special event request by Starkville High School to hold the 2019 Homecoming Parade on September 30th, 2019, and have city participation with in-kind services.
Move approval.
All right, I heard Alderman Walker approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Carver. Further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5 to 2, motion carries.
Can we take a break?
Would you like a break? All right, how about a 10-minute break? Come back at 7:35, please. Thank you. So if you would, take your seats, and we will move along with our next item on the agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is, under board business, consideration of the fiscal year tax millage for the city of Starkville. All right, we have had a rather thorough discussion under public hearing on that tax millage. It would appear as though we have a fairly seriously split board. I do want to say that I think this is as critical a time for us as we move forward on this as anything. I think it's time for us to pay our employees. I think it's time for us to man Station 5. I think it's time for us to give our police the equipment that they need. I think it's time for us to give our streets the equipment they need. And I certainly believe it's time for us to give our police equipment as well as it relates to the cameras, the software, the storage, et cetera. I think all of those things are crucial to our success in the future. And I am only saying that to emphasize the importance of what I believe would be a portion of this vote. I see a rather divided group of folks, so I would love to hear from others who haven't spoken yet as it relates to this, to have an idea of how everyone feels about this. Alderman
That's
Walker.
not me, Mayor. I've already spoken. But
You
I do have
Alderman Walker.
I do have a question, and this may be a question for the city attorney. What is the drop dead date state mandate where we have to have our budget approved?
So the statute calls for the budget to be approved in a regular meeting in September, or no later than 10 days after the final approval of the assessment rolls. And if it's not approved by September 15th, then you miss out temporarily on the ad valorem taxes that attach to license plate purchases from September 15th forward until the millage is adopted. A drop dead date would be before the fiscal year, but the fact that the statutory language says adoption must occur at a regular meeting in September, we would recess tonight, and that regular meeting would be September 17th. So I think that's a good working drop dead deadline to make sure you're statutorily compliant.
So if this board were to vote either on the 17th or sometime in between, we would meet our statutory requirements?
Yes, you would miss out on those 2 days of license plate purchases where the tax would attach, but that can be made up on the back end.
Okay, so the thing that I'm hearing, I think it seems like we've got a number of aldermen, not to speak for them, but have said they think we can find the money in the budget. We've asked the question about what is the issue with the decrease in revenue from the police department. Would it be prudent to have a potential work session between now and then before we have a vote to see if we can find in the budget where that money might be able to come from? And put this vote till that meeting or sometime before that next meeting, if we can have a work session to see if we can find where some of that money may come from?
Absolutely.
Alderman Carver or anybody, I mean, are we willing to look at that?
Alderman Vaughn?
I think what we take first thing go. Well, first, earlier we was talking about giving employees a raise before we brought all this in. We had sit around, we had discussed it. The money was there to give the employees a raise. You said we said one thing and you made yourself. You said another thing. You
I'm
said
sorry.
give them more. You remember when we all were discussing about giving employees a raise?
Right.
But you said there wasn't enough about a hamburger. So the money was there at first. All of a sudden, and now the money's not there. We didn't put so much with it. Let's take one thing first at a time. Let's get employees a raise, and let's go from there and take every issue like that instead of just not giving the employees a raise at all. Let's take it like that. And I don't think we have to raise the millage just to give employees a raise. I wouldn't want to even think that. I wouldn't even want to think the public think that we got to raise the millage just to give employees a raise when we already was in the planning to give the employees a raise.
Okay.
Can
Alderman Sistrunk?
Can I say that my recollection of those discussions were whether we wanted to look at whether we could give employees a raise or not. I like very much Alderman Walker's suggestion that perhaps we have a work session, and what I would like to do in that work session is if Alderman Carver, Alderman Vaughn, those of you who think that money is there somewhere, for us to go line by line through the revenue items in the budget and make sure we peg down our revenues at a number that we think we can reasonably attain during the year. And then we can look at some of our bigger expense items. If we don't make up this $400,000 or $500,000, we can look at our expense items then. But I like very much the idea of a work session.
But I think,
Alderman Beatty?
Alderman Sistrom, you're saying we have $400,000 or $500,000 we got to make up somewhere. If we do
want
things
to
you
do
listed
things.
tonight.
Yeah.
And two or three of those things, an employee pay raise, per what Nav brought us, the information he brought us in the work session, is discretionary, but we want to do it. PERS increase is not discretionary.
No.
That's $170,000, and we got to come up with it, and the state of Mississippi didn't give us a way to come up with it, and said, you deal with it, local. Health insurance is going up, and that's not discretionary. We got to come up with that money, right? What are those? I just named those three things I named. How much is that?
Well, the PERS and the health insurance is about $325,000.
And depending on when you phase in that.
And the raise, if we begin to phase in the raise mid-year, which would be April, is $105,000. If we wanted to do it October 1st, it would be twice that much. Not quite $105,000. I think they've cleaned that number up a little bit. But I really want the board, and therefore the public, to be comfortable that we are projecting our revenues and that we are not asking for a tax increase unnecessarily. And so that's why I think the idea of an additional work session and just doing nothing but going line by line through those revenue items, and if there's something we can change, we can make those changes.
But short of collecting $400,000 in
it's a lot of
police
money.
fines, are we reasonably going to be able to find $400,000 in your budget? I mean, your pencil's pretty sharp. I know you're good at putting a budget together. So I mean, if we don't, then having a work session is futile. I mean, it is. We're just going to go in there and I mean, if we're philosophically opposed to a mill or $1.5 million tax, just because of the fact that it's now gotten to the point where anytime anybody mentions tax increases, like, okay, I mean, that's a dirty word. Things have to, the car you bought this year is 15 or 20% higher than the car you bought 5 or 6 years ago. We go buy them anyway, but we realize that the cost of steel and the cost of labor and the cost of workers' comp and the cost of insurance and all the things that are built into the cost of an automobile have gone up. We accept that, and if we want an automobile, we buy one and we pay that additional money. Some of our costs have gone up. Our city employees need additional pay to get them up to the standards of other cities our size. The PERS stuff's a mandate. We don't have any option on it. The health insurance, we're going to maintain really good health insurance for employees. That's a mandate. I mean, that's something it's mandatory. We don't have an option on that. So we can go into a work meeting, but unless you think we can peel off $400,000 or $500,000 up by cutting and trimming and stuff like that, I mean, we're just going to be spinning a wheel.
I don't know that we can. I don't know that we can, but I think it will give the board a much better confidence level that it is appropriate for them to support a tax increase. I don't think, because not everybody's as knee-deep in these numbers as I am, I don't think that they believe that money is not there. And the only way I know to do that is to have a work session and to go line by line through there, show them where the number came from, how it's trending, why it is what it is, and then let them make the decision. It does us no good to approve a pay raise that we can't pay for.
I agree with that.
And so I think that then lets people make a more informed decision than they might make tonight on a vote.
But I want this board to agree that if we go into a work session and we figure out we steal $300,000 and we come out of that work meeting and it takes a mill to do that, we need to put on a mill. I mean, let's do it. Because we cannot approve a deficit budget. State of Mississippi, state law says we can't do that. We got to approve a balance. You cannot approve a surplus. You can't budget for for more money than you're gonna spend, but at the same time, you can't budget for deficit either, so.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Latimer wants to be recognized procedurally, and then Mr. Carver, I'll call on you.
Board, this is pertinent to your discussion right now. If the board desires to have a work session, I would advise that be as soon as possible, perhaps Thursday, because if it's decided that the millage should change from 1.5 increase out of that work session, Lisa would then have to notice freshly, and that would be once each week for 2 consecutive weeks. So that's about the latest the work session could occur to give her time to publish notice pursuant to the statute.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Carver.
Before we go to a work session, I'm gonna ask you let me back up first of all and say thank you, because we have an individual on the board through her career and her background that I think that's a good thing. It can be a bad thing because you have the knowledge and then you do take the budget and you run with it. So first of all, I say thank you and appreciate you. And sometimes, everyone's not included on every number and line item. It's just, I know personally I've worked full time, and I think you have more time to be able to do this, and your expertise allows you to do this, and you take that on, and I appreciate it. Okay. These three things right here, we talk about health insurance is mandated $130,000.
We've got to pay our health insurance bills.
Okay. The PERS is mandated. That's a state change.
It's gone from,
$195.
it went from 15.75 to 17.4.
And the Academy Sports TIF is $175,000. I came up with $500 even on those three line items. These two line items here, I'm just asking you now because we may could solve this tonight. Personnel changes, including longevity, $195,000.
That's just the difference. What we've done is both Nav Ashford, our HR director, and the city clerk's office has a list of all the funded positions, and they have worksheets that they have those, they have their pay, and they project out a number, and that's what we budget.
This is the presentation by the gentleman?
No, this is just a worksheet that they maintain so that when we're budgeting, we budget for every position that's approved, whether it's full at the moment, like some of the police officers or the firemen may be vacant at the end of the year. We make sure we get them in the budget. There are changes from year to year. Some of that is longevity raises. Some of it is that we have hired new people at rates that are higher than their previous people. But if we run a report that shows us our personnel costs for this year versus our projected personnel costs for next year, the difference is $195,000.
And then the $295 we talked about for the police department primarily, public safety overtime.
Police and fire, and those numbers are driven. We have traditionally not budgeted enough overtime in recognition of the staffing needs that we're having these days. And so this year, we're starting our budget year with an appropriate amount in the budget for overtime, based on what we have spent in the last 2 or 3 years on overtime.
My opinion, kind of where I'm going is, if we go to a work session, I'd like to really target the personnel changes with the longevity. I want to see more. You're going to have to sell me on that, honestly, Nav. And then secondly is maybe if it's a policy change time. I know what we've seen, the growth in this town in the last 10 years and the amount of special events. And I personally, as the partnership comes, they are always coming up with buds and burgers and pumpkin palooza and all these things that it's what driving our economy to some effect in Starkville, but at the same time it's costing obviously us $300,000 annually.
Not all that overtime is related to special events, and I don't know. I think the chief could go back. We could maybe go back and recap it ourselves. But the last time that I saw something that talked about how much per year we spend on overtime related to special events, it was. I have a number between 40 and 60,000 stuck in my mind. A good part of that is football games at MSU, and they reimburse us for that. So of that 40 to 60,000, we get reimbursed about 25,000 of it. So that's not the driver. The driver for the overtime is when there's a serious crime and we have to have people out investigating. The drivers are when we are understaffed and we're having to pull in people who not only are being paid at overtime rates, but they're probably people who've been with us long enough that they're making more per hour than those entry-level people were making. And the same is true over in the fire department, that they have vacancies, they have turnover, and they have to backfill with more expensive people and pay the overtime rate to boot.
So it seems like we're in a catch-22 because we're not paying our employees enough, and if they can, the problem in living in the Golden Triangle is they're not only getting recruited from 2 other municipalities, actually closer to 6 or 8 once you include county law enforcement, and not only municipality, but and fire as well. So it seems like we're in a catch-22 because we're not paying them enough, and yet we're having to use overtime senior employees to make up for, it sounds to me if only 40 or 60,000 of it's coming out of special events, and maybe just from you hearing, say that I thought it was more special events driven on the 300,000 or 295, but that's some of the things I want to see numbers on.
And we can do that. And if that gives people a comfort level that the budget is projected at a realistic rate, then I'm happy to go line by line. As you say, I've got time, and I love numbers. So.
Alderman Carver, can I ask you a quick question? Because I didn't quite understand it. I want to make sure NAV does. You had said NAV needed to convince you of what it was. Was it the longevity stuff that's
I
in
just want to see the numbers. I haven't seen just the detailed line items of the personnel changes. It's 195,000 on here.
We can get that report.
I want to
Sure.
see that, and just those two, these two, the personnel and overtime, pretty much offset the health insurance, the PERS, and the academy TIF. So.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure, I wasn't real clear on what you were asking for, and I knew Mr. Ashford would want to fulfill your request, and I just want to make sure he understood what it was you wanted the information about.
And I'll talk to you after the meeting.
And I understand what he's looking for, so.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, anyone else?
David,
Yes,
can
Alderman
we get
Bates.
this done, and how soon can you put the meeting together? And council, when do we need to publish it? I mean, how soon can it do it? Can we get it done by the end of the month?
Well, I'm just kind of counting dates in my head. Let's say the mayor calls for a work session right now under the statute that she calls for normal work sessions, and that work session is set maybe for Thursday. Then if you guys decide to adjust the millage based on what has already been noticed, then Lisa could get an ad in the Starkville Daily News as soon as they would take it. I'm thinking that would be either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday at the latest. If it runs on Monday of next week, then it could run on Monday before our next recess board meeting, and you could get in under the statutory deadline.
You still got to have a public hearing though with the change in rate.
You would have a public hearing on the new millage rate if that's what you guys.
Probably next scheduled, next meeting, would you have a meeting in between?
No, you.
Sanders way around.
Even though it might be a,
Could this, we have frequently advertised things and changed based on what we've heard in the public hearing, and we've done it because it has not been a substantial change. Could we have our work session, and depending on what comes out of that work session, make the decision then about whether we need to renotice it? For instance, we might be able to take that 1.5 mils down to 1.4 mils, and that's not a substantial change, I don't think.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. Nothing would be noticed between now and the work session, but coming out of the work session, if an opinion coalesced, then it would be noticed quickly before the recess meeting.
so even if it was a de minimis change, you'd still have to make the notice? Any change at all requires a notice?
Yeah, because we haven't noticed, if this millage, we've noticed a new millage of 28.13.
Right.
And so if a different millage is decided upon by the city, then there has to be a public hearing
Even
on
if it's
that.
a lesser millage?
That's right.
Okay, all right. Okay, do I have any further discussion? Do I have a motion from someone?
I would move that the mayor call a work session.
Okay,
And should we go ahead and set a recess meeting sooner than the 17th, or is that the earliest we can do?
we can set a meeting at any time, we just have to, I can work through who would be available, yes. Alderman Latimer?
No.
Attorney Latimer?
Alderman Sistrunk, the statute says that adoption must occur at a regular meeting in September, so I think that the board ought to stick to the September 17th date.
Okay.
Okay.
But the mayor can set the recess meeting as soon as you guys can get together. I would say Thursday at the latest.
Okay. Well, I'd
For
like
the
for
work
it to be
session.
For the work
Thursday
session, I'm
then,
sorry,
so
I misspoke, the work session.
Okay, all right, so a work session, all right. So I have a motion from Alderman Sistrunk to
Set the work
table,
session.
table this item A and set, well, you want to take, well,
I'm not sure
one
that
at a time.
table is the word I want to use.
Okay.
Is that, to delay?
Take it under advisement.
Take it under advisement?
Take it under advisement.
Okay, take it under advisement. I have a motion, take it under advisement. The consideration of the tax millage, take it under advisement. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Beatty. Okay, further discussion.
Yeah, Mayor, may I be recognized? Attorney, may I be
Vice
recognized,
Mayor?
Mayor? Thank you. Attorney, this motion is to table, what's your exact wording?
Take it under advisement.
Take an advisement. Attorney, if you take an advisement, I mean, is that going to be coupled with a motion for a work session? Or, I mean, the motion didn't say that. I mean,
I was just about to say that if it's the board's desire to have the work session, it needs to be in the motion.
that's what my reason, my recognition here. Yield, Mayor.
Okay, all right. Would you like to amend that motion?
I would,
Alderman Sistrunk?
To
Okay.
call for a work session and to take this under advisement and call for a work session.
Okay. Do I have a,
Normal statute,
Should be Thursday.
254113.
that's a friendly
And,
amendment?
and with the work session Thursday, is that what your sister?
I think we need at least a day or two to pull together some of the information. I mean, it's there, but we just have to
Thursday.
physically pull it together.
Either Thursday or Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday at 4? Thursday at, well, yes, Thursday at 4?
You're talking about September 5th?
Yes.
I'm available.
Anybody pushing back on that? So I have a motion to take this under advisement and call for a work session at 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 5th. Is that correct? Alderman Sistrunk? Okay. Alderman Beatty, is that friendly? Okay, I have a second to that with the friendly amendment being agreed upon. Any further discussion?
Is it? Is
Alderman
able to
Carver.
vote during that meeting, or we'll be able to vote on the work session, or it has to be a special, I mean, it has to be a regular call meeting?
It does. So there wouldn't be affirmative action taken during that meeting. There would just be a coalescence of opinion about whether you wanted to adjust the millage from what it's already advertised at, which is the 1.5 mil increase, taking you up to 28.13 mils.
You know, just highly encourage all aldermen to be there, and just for the sake of your constituents, and, you know, obviously, I'm voting tonight, and that's fine,
For the work session?
but maybe there all night, but let's just get through it Thursday, and I expect some type of final answer coming Thursday night.
Okay, all right, I have a motion, I have a second, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll do this as a roll call. If you would, please say yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrunk.
Yay.
Alderman Little. Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Beatty.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Nay.
Alderman Vaughn.
Nay.
So by a vote of 5 to 2, motion carries. We will have a work session at 4 o'clock on Thursday the 5th, and that it was notified under the 254113, which I usually am calling for a work session for the Board of Aldermen, so we will notify that as a part of that, call. All right. The next item on the agenda is consideration of the budget for the city of Starkville.
And I move that we take that under advisement into the work session.
Same motion with, yes. Okay.
Same second.
And the same second. So, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, motion carries by a vote of 5 to 2. All right, now we have a discussion concerning a board-approved special event. Vice Mayor Perkins, this one was yours.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, I'll announce to the chair when I'm finished, and I'll announce it when I get ready to yield. Chief, let me ask you a few housekeeping questions. Chief Nichols, let me just, just some friendly questions that relates to the city. Chief, let me just say, first of all, thank you for the exemplary service that you have performed for the city of Starkville, and want to go on record and say that again. And this is your last year having to deal with special events. So let me just dialogue with you just a little bit, and hopefully I get the attention of all my colleagues and all that's tuning in on this very important matter. Chief, Let me direct your attention back prior to our June 4, 2019 Board of Aldermen meeting of the city of Starkville. And Chief, prior to that meeting, you had the occasion, and I'm just going to ask you a few questions, just nothing negative here, but prior to that meeting, you had the occasion to review a special event policy for the city of Starkville that was tendered to the city as relates to the Bulldog Bash. Is that correct?
A representative of my department did. We have a representative that attend the DRC meetings.
So the answer to my question is yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And based on my question, not going to be tricky. They're just very straightforward. When you received that application, Chief Nichols, what information did you have before you, as the Chief of Police for the city of Stark, for you to make a recommendation as to your approval or disapproval?
It asks questions like location, venue size, how many staff members do you need, things like that.
At the time, Mr. Chief of Police, that you reviewed that application, did you have personal knowledge or any type of knowledge as to the scope of the activities that the 2019 Bulldog Bash would encompass?
No, sir. If you're asking me if I knew that.
No.
Okay.
Listen to my question.
Okay.
I'm clear. Don't assume anything. At the time that you considered the application of the Bulldog Bash sponsors, did you have information that informed you specifically of the scope of the activities that would actually take place on this scheduled event?
No, sir.
Do you consider that to have been important, Chief, for you to have had all of the information before you at the time that you considered it, so you can correctly inform the mayor, the vice mayor, and the board in your decision making?
Without a doubt.
Chief, why was that important for you to have had that information for consideration in terms of making a recommendation to the mayor as your day-to-day supervisor, and ultimately you're reporting to the mayor and board? Why was that important?
So we can properly plan and prepare for something of this magnitude. I don't think it's something that you can do in a month, properly, because we had to have additional personnel, resources, whatever the resources may be.
Mr. Chief of Police, if we refer your attention back to the 2018 Bulldog Bash, Mr. Police Chief, how many people do you recall having attended the 2018 Bulldog Bash?
I'm going to say they estimated it at about 40,000.
And at the time of the 2018 Bulldog Bash, how many officers did you have on your police staff? Not that, was that that's my question. How many officers did you have in 2018 at the time of the Bulldog Bash in September 2018?
Between 35 and 40.
You
mean department-wide?
Department-wide, yes,
60.
Sir.
We got 60
We had
officers.
60.
Yeah.
So you assigned at least have about 40,000 or more people at the 2018 Bulldog Bash, and you assigned about 35 officers there to that 2018. Now, Chief of Police, since you're aware that the board approved the Bulldog Bash application on 4 affirmative votes, 2 nay votes, and 1 absent back here on June the 4th of 2019, you're aware of that?
Yes, sir.
And in that approval, Chief, that overall in-kind budget that was approved by the city was $17,642.50, and of that amount, $13,125 was for police. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you made that recommendation based upon the information. I'm with you, Chief. You made that recommendation based upon the information that you had at that time.
Yes, sir. Based upon the information on the application. Yes, sir.
Now, Chief, since that June 4, 2018, has there been any material or substantive change in the scope of the activities, yes or no, since that's all I'm asking for, nothing further, since that approval on June 4, 2018?
Yes, sir.
Given your knowledge of the change, these questions are very tailored, narrow. I'm just looking for specific answers. Since the scope has changed since June 4, 2018, well, prior to the scope changing, how many officers were you going to tender based on what you knew as of that June 4, 2018 board meeting? June 4, 2019 board meeting? 40. Now that you're aware that the scope, and when did you became aware that the scope of the activities or the events for that September 2019 Bulldog Bash has changed?
Last week or the last part of the week before.
So in the latter part of August of 2019.
Yes, sir.
And the Bulldog Bash is going to be before our first SEC home game this year. I think that's the Kentucky game.
Yes, sir.
So now that the scope has changed, you had about 36 to 40 last year. You have 60 officers, but you don't have actually 60, maybe about 56 or 57 officers, Chief.
Yes, sir.
So given the fact that the scope has changed, you had about 40,000 last year, how many people do you expect to be at this concert for September 2019, given your estimation and your experience as a police officer and chief of police, and realizing the fact that you have been an employee as a police officer for the city of Starkville since on about December 1992. So Chief, so what do you anticipate the population or attendance going to be at this event?
I would assume that we're going to have a considerable amount more, being that this is a lot bigger artist, and I'm, for a free concert, I'm probably saying you're going to draw people as far as Jackson, maybe. So if we had 40 last year, we'll have 50.
About 50 or more, sir?
I would think so. Yes, sir.
So you say that's your testimony?
That's my predicament.
About 50,000 more.
Yes, sir.
And so you estimate, and this because normally Bulldog Bash is then 10 of it for students, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so you think it'll draw a regional crowd by 50,000 more?
Yes, sir.
So now that you say that you have about 36 to 40 officers you have only about 56. You don't have a complete complement of 60 officers. So, and you expect about 50,000 more people, which is about 10,000 more than did last year. And last year you had 36 to 40 officers, and you only got 56. And that's not to say all of them on duty at one time. So how many of those officers are you going to have to assign to this 2019 Bulldog Bash, Honorable Chief of Police?
Well, as I said, we're looking to assign 40 to 42. The shift that's off-going, normally we wouldn't have them work because they got to come back the next day. But we're going to require them to work as well. So you're looking at another 7 to 8 officers. You're looking at about 50 officers.
So we're looking at 50 officers of the Starkville Police Department, or the 56 that we have, to work the Bulldog Bash for September 2019.
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Police Chief, thank you for your candidness, and you're always doing a great job. Now, Mr. Police Chief, now that we'll have 50 of our 56 officers of the city of Starkville assigned to this one event, do you have an opinion as to what assistance, if any, that you will have to get from any other law enforcement agency or agencies for traffic control and for crowd control?
MSUPD is giving us additional 13 officers.
So you have, for this event, this event going to be on the public streets?
Yes, sir.
It's going to be free?
Yes, sir.
And people may come maybe from other states, potentially?
Yes,
potentially.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So you have 50 officers of our 56 patrolling this event downtown, plus we'll have 13 from Mississippi State University. And that still may not potentially be enough. Am I correct, Mr. Police Chief?
Yes, sir, you are.
Now, Mr. Police Chief, now, given the fact that the budget that was approved for the in-kind services for the Bulldog Bash for 2019, which was $17,642.50, and yours was $13,125 for Bulldog Bash 2019. What do you now estimate? Do you now estimate your new budget for the 2019 Bulldog Bash in that prior to and at the time of our consideration of this at the June 4, 2019 board meeting, it was $13,125. What do you estimate in your best estimation, Mr. Chief of Police?
I couldn't give you an estimation because what we're looking at is this. Once we turn loose from the Bulldog Bash, those same group of people, all of them not going home. You're looking at over half of them going to stay, and they're going to move to the Cotton District. So all those officers are going with them. So it depends on how long they stay out there.
But let me say this, Mr. Chief, you didn't answer my question. Let me say the question again. I thought it was clear. We're not talking about after the Bulldog Bash.
Right.
The Vice Mayor is talking about at the Bulldog Bash. So do you agree with me, Mr. Police Chief, that your budget has increased from $13,125 because you just testified?
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Right, so it's going to be more than you estimated. So the point I'm making here, Chief, I got some more questions. The point that I'm making with this whole agenda item, in case some out there wondering what this is all about, you're on your way out.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of this is this. You know, since this board is committed by a majority vote to in-kind services, when these individuals, and no disrespect to anybody, you need to have it, the mayor needs to have it, and the board needs to know all of the details when this first come up.
Yes, sir.
Are you correct?
Yes, sir.
Does that give you any concern, Chief?
Yes, sir, it does.
From a planning purposes to promote the health, safety, and welfare of this city?
It does. It does.
Because if you don't have all the information, you cannot properly plan.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right.
Because you heard the board say tonight, as we talk about special events, you know, that's where the money going. If you have $13,125, and I think it's reasonable to say that your budget's going to be in excess of $15,000 for this one event, when this group just presented a budget to us tonight and showing $450,000, and they don't expend one red penny on this 50,000 plus crowd that is expected to be on our streets, that we, the taxpayers, having to try to decide a millage matter. And then here you are, can't get the information from them about for planning purposes. So that gives you grave concern, right, Chief?
Yes, sir.
So hopefully the lesson to be learned is, and this all is not negative, you know, this is a good, healthy conversation, Chief. I want you to understand that. You and I are great friends, okay?
Yes, sir.
I mean, this is professional. You're a law enforcement officer, and I'm a lawyer of 31 years, okay? So the lesson to be learned from this is, and this is nothing negative to anybody because the board has already approved the special event, okay? And I don't have no issue with that. If that's what the majority has done, I'm just not going to vote for it. So, but the bottom line is, what we want to learn from this is that if the board certainly amends this special event, that'll be best for the city, in my opinion. But I think even if it does not, you know, just like the insurance issue tonight, you know, the board has been so nice, and they stated, you know, in the scope of the event has material and substantively changed. They can't even get the insurance in on time. You go back and read the motion that was approved on June 4, 2019. It says that the insurance has to be in by the first day of September 2019. You know, that's nothing unscholarly to understand. So, but Chief, thank you for your candidness. The points I wanted to bring out.
Yes, sir.
In order for whoever is going to be your predecessor, and this not only pertains to Bulldog Bash, but I wanted to highlight this because of the scope of the dollar amount and the scope and the change of the events and activities. You know, it's not just a minor change. Like you say, this is a major change, Chief. And then our street's going to be used. I mean, this is going to be an open street. Anybody come, anybody want to. There's no legal basis that you can exclude anybody. Correct, Chief?
That's correct.
If they come from New York down here, they got to come down here. They can sit out there and listen to the music and have a good time as long as they comply with the local laws.
Yes, sir.
They gonna, like you say, gonna draw a regional crowd. So hopefully, as we move forward, this information will be required. Maybe the board will look at, and I'm closing here, to amend the special event policy, however they want to do. You know, I'm looking at it from the conservative amount. I'm not in favor of any of this, but I think at least need to be done, Chief, not only for this event, but at least require them to disclose up front so the board can properly plan. Because maybe if the board, not saying I don't second guess this board, but maybe if the board had known the scope of the activity, I think they need to be required to say, for the board got a right to know who's going to come, who's not going, who's going to be here, and all those details. Instead, I don't think they just decided last week who they're going to bring here to get a major headliner. We're all smarter than that. You agree, Chief?
Yes, sir.
They had to have been knowing that. So this is some good substantive comments. This is nothing negative. It just takes a lot of strength to say this, but this is very important to say. So I hope my colleagues, just appreciate my saying this, because somebody got to say it. And if anybody in Mississippi State got any questions about what I said, they can just ask the mayor for a copy of this tape. I mean, I don't apologize. I mean, everything was clean, clear, legal. I mean, clean comments, right, lawyer?
Yes, sir.
And so, but Chief, but we appreciate you, Mayor. I mean, this again, I want to make it really clear. We partner with Mississippi State, Alderman Walker and other colleagues that work out there. It's nothing negative, Mississippi State. Y'all tune in, listening. We got rules and regulations. When we go out there on that campus, they got rules what we can do. They got rules about their coliseum. They got rules about their stadium. They got rules. We got rules. We have rules too. We're going to enforce our rules. We worked with them, gave them that building out there, the parking garage. They got to abide by our rules. Can't comply with our rules. We won't get the insurance policy in on time. We ought to revoke it tonight. But I'm not going to suggest that anymore. So, but Chief, but thank you for your comments, your candidness, and and hopefully your staff, whoever is the next chief of police, because we know we have some great employees in this city. You're doing a great job. I hate to see you go, but I want to use this moment, Mayor and Chief and Board, so we can get this point out, and hopefully this message has been adequately conveyed. The media, y'all understand all this, and I'm not going to talk to you after this meeting about this thing. I talked enough now. You hadn't gotten it. It's tough. But Chief, this is how it goes. But thank you for your leadership. I know you're going to do a great job, and these questions were not designed to indicate that you're not going to do it, because I have every bit of confidence in you. I know that because I'm going to be at 620 Hospital Road having a good night's sleep. I know the mayor not going to call me and tell me we got an issue on hand, because you're going to take care of it. But we need to say this tonight, gentlemen from 5. We need to say this, and everybody at this table. We have to say this so we can understand. The vice mayor don't talk unless I feel I need to have something substantive to say. So, but I'm through talking for tonight, and I'm done for the night, Mayor. I don't have nothing else to say. But Chief, that's it. We appreciate you, and but thank you, Mayor. I'm not only yelling for now, I'm yelling for the night. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Chief, before you go away, let's talk a little bit further about this, because I want to make sure that there is some sense of comfort that we are providing adequate safety to our people and those who would be in attendance. So if you would narrate a little bit, we have our own 50 officers, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We have 13 from university, which they have, when we found out who the artist was, I immediately called for some assistance, and they immediately said 13 officers. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I had a call from the chief.
Okay. And so they are working with us on this, obviously. It is an event that is student association driven. They provide their own security, do they not?
They do. They do have event staff that's out there.
Right, and they're labeled as security, so I assume they have some measure of training. Do we have any idea how many they're going to be there?
No, ma'am, I don't.
Okay. My recollection is from what you have said that you're going to have, or maybe it was Captain Ballard, I don't want to put words in your mouth that I didn't hear out of your mouth. They're going to have their dogs.
Yes,
is that
ma'am.
correct?
I told you that.
Okay, and then we're going to have wands.
We are.
Okay, and we're going to have any other security elements? Obviously, we have our security cameras, right?
Yeah, we are going to deploy bicycles, in the area for people that might want to break in cars. We're also going to have their motorcycles as well, which they're quiet, they're unquiet because they're battery operated.
Right.
And we'll have officers on foot in that area as well.
Okay. And do we get assistance from the Sheriff's Department as well for this?
Well, we requested assistance from them. They're short.
Okay.
So if we need them,
they
of
are
course,
short too, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we need them, of course, they're coming.
Sure.
You know, so
Okay.
I'm sure this is going to affect them too in the area, just in the general area, period.
Okay, all right. And one of the things that I know is a part of the issue for us is that the kids, and by that I mean the Student Association, tries to get artists. And artists are very expensive, and so they do what they can, and you really don't care about this, but this is what little I know about getting artists, is that they work their way through a process to try to find who's going to be in the area that would cost them the least. So one of the reasons they have to wait so late is because they wait for commitments from artists, which continues to be a problem because they still don't have a signed contract. And if I recall correctly, last time Flo Rida dissed them and didn't show, right? So, they still don't have a signed contract. So from our perspective, they can't get an insurance liability established until they have a contract. So we are all caught kind of in the middle of something that isn't of our own making and is a little more complex. But I do want to assure through you that we have our best people working, and we have a collection of people who have come to the table to be a part of this in a positive way so that everyone has a good experience. I have attended both Bulldog Bashes that have been downtown once they changed the venue, and it has been a remarkable experience. Y'all have done yeoman's work, and I think this will also be a really good experience. So thank you very much for all you do. As the Vice Mayor said, all you have done,
Yes, ma'am.
and we appreciate your service. So thank you. Anyone else?
I just have one. I wasn't really aware of any of this change until tonight. And so, Chief, when you said the scope has changed, is the location or the venue, is all that the same? Is the only change is that now the headliner is a bigger headliner that you believe is going to attract more people?
That's the only change that I'm aware of.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
the physical location, the only
Same.
thing we were saying the scope is bigger is that you believe that the band that is supposedly coming, the artist that is coming, is going to attract a bigger crowd.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to clarify.
Alderman Carver, did I see your hand?
Well, this is your last Bulldog Bash. Huh? Maybe we'll have you back as a consultant next year. But have you seen the bollards in the downtown location really just help alleviate some officers being stationed from a crowd safety
Definitely
standpoint?
does.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think I heard that, but and I'll tell you that just having family 2 or 3 blocks over, they said it's even quieter for some reason. I don't understand if it's a tunnel effect with downtown, but it tends to be quieter than even fraternity parties, which are obviously a greater distance from their house. So that's interesting to me. And then the second thing is this not trigger any type of interoperability agreements with other neighboring counties? I mean, I would say other than the football game, this is the largest crowd in the Golden Triangle.
Yeah, we've looked at different things like, for example, Mississippi State, when they have football games, what they do is they get officers from all around the state, and they come out there and work. We even tried to look at that list. But what you got is the next day, you got SEC game, so all those officers are going to be working out there. And then, of course, the number one thing, where we going to get the money from this quick? Because Mississippi State is paying these people $25 to $30 an hour to work the football games. So nobody, this day and time, a certified law enforcement, they're not going to come out nowhere unless it's at least $25.
An hour.
An hour. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. Alderman Little, did I see your hand? I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is consideration of a resolution declaring the intention of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen to issue general obligation.
Mayor, move approval.
Thank you. Alderman Walker, I have a motion for approval of the issuance of public park improvement bonds. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, Alderman Little. I have a second from Alderman Little. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
By motion 5-2, the motion passes. Resolution approving the adoption of a tax instrument financing plan for the Guerin Manufacturing Redevelopment Project. Do we have a motion of any kind? All right, Mr. Gouris, would you like to come up and share a little information about that? Since you're here, you might as well collect your fee for doing something.
Thank you. And it might have been better for me to step forward at the public hearing, but I was waiting to call. So anyway, at the last board meeting, I think everyone's aware, the board set a public hearing for tonight to discuss the project. My name's Chris Gouris. My company's Gouris and Associates, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Castleberry, Mark, and Luke. The entity they have controlling this project is Castle Properties LLC. They're proposing to purchase the existing Guerin property, 10.1 acres, and at a point in the future, about a little year and a half out, when Guerin has built in the industrial park and relocated, they would demo this building, redevelop a 90,000 square foot shopping center. Right now, they have letters of intent in hand from Aldi and TJ Maxx. This project will represent an investment of about $20 million, consisting again of 90,000 square feet. Proposed that the city pledge increased property taxes and sales taxes to service the debt on TIF bonds. That the county this morning held a hearing similar to this and approved their participation in the project as well. Presently, the city collects $4,100 a year off the property. At the conclusion of the project, we expect the property tax to increase by $41,000. The county collects $8,600 a year. At the conclusion of the project, we expect about an $86,000 increase. The school district presently collects $10,000 a year. We expect that increase to be $101,000 annually at the conclusion of the build-out of the project. It's estimated about $35 million in retail sales will be generated on site, of which about $5 million will be food and beverage, subject to the 3% tax that I think will help pay some of the debt on the action that you previously took, generating about $150,000 a year there. The plan before the city has the city pledging 100% of the property tax and using 100% of the property tax to allocate towards debt service. The county approved 100% pledge of their property tax this morning using 75%. The plan contemplates pledging 75% of the sales tax and using up to 50% for debt service. I expect that you'll have an interlocal agreement to consider, assuming that this plan is approved in the next board meeting or two, in which the allocation of revenues to debt service would be all the city property tax, 75% of the county's property tax, and then as much of the sales tax as necessary to cover the debt service on the proposed bonds, which on paper would have the city using about 35% of sales tax to cover the debt on $3 million in TIF bonds. There was some discussion about leakage and information related to retail leakage. Our consultants identified about $18 million in grocery leakage, and if I recall at our last meeting, it was reported that the city's retail consultants reported it was substantially more than that. They also made a finding that this was a reasonable TIF request given the scope and nature of the project. With that said, Mayor, I guess I've addressed any questions. Also, let me say one other thing. It was also agreed in our discussions that there's discussion over the stormwater detention, whether to adhere to 10-year, 24-hour event, or 100-year. And we're agreeing to meet whatever requirements that the city ultimately determines to be necessary, with a baseline that the difference in cost in 10-year and 100-year we think is about $365,000. And in the development agreement that's on the board agenda for consideration, there's a mechanism on the back end that whatever the city determines to be necessary, we can evaluate on the back end and reduce the TIF dollar for dollar if we don't spend that $365,000.
And it is a 15-year TIF?
Bonds not to exceed 15 years.
And as a part of this, you have agreed that the maximum period of time which that TIF would be active would be 5 years?
That we would have 5 years from the date Guerin vacates the property to be able to come back to the city and issue the bonds. As is customary in these TIFs, with the commitment of the city and county, our client would finance the undertaking entirely, build the project, place it in service, and hopefully about a year out, when we come back and have established what those revenues are, we would come back and ask the city to issue bonds at that time.
Okay. Any questions of the board? Alderman Walker.
It's not a question, just again to clarify from a comment that was made earlier, and just so that we're clear, is that the issue before the board right now is a TIF for a new shopping center that is on the current site for the Guerin, where the current Guerin manufacturing site is.
Correct.
So it is nothing to do with Garin moving to the new industrial park and anything related to Garin itself, other than this would be a TIF through the current site of the Garin property to be redeveloped.
I think that's mostly accurate. The only thing that I would say is that I do believe, I don't represent Garin, but I do believe that they are anticipating taking the proceeds from the sale of this real estate and applying it to their budget on their move.
Absolutely.
So they are connected in that, to that extent.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, anyone else? Alderman Sistrom.
And I would just like to clarify something that came up earlier, too. The TIF arrangement is between the city and the developer, who ultimately winds up in that space. Does not matter other than the fact that they are renting space from the developer. But you've used the names Aldi and TJ Maxx because of your letters of intent. There's none of this money diverts to those businesses. It is strictly an agreement between the city and the developer.
That is correct.
Mayor.
Alderman Beatty?
Yes. Mr. Gross, let's clarify that a little bit and say some of the rent, base rent on those anchor tenants will be more favorable because of the TIF. I mean, because the capital costs will be reduced by the amount of TIF, and so the amount that maybe Aldi will pay or decide in this market, retail market, they'll pay per square foot, and TJ Maxx will be affected by that downward. So in as much as that would happen, the TIF would have affected the tenants in the shopping center, yes, in favorably.
Mr. Beatty, I would say that certainly is a way to evaluate it, but TJ Maxx has been looking to locate in Starkville for about 8 years and has evaluated other properties. Aldi's been looking for a couple of years, evaluating other properties. And it's more like the terms they're dictating to my client. They're going to pay X. It's not that we get a TIF and they pay less. They're going to pay X, and we got to figure out how to make the budget work. Yes, sir. So said differently, the end result may be the same, but without it, we're not going to have a shopping center, and we're not going to have a tenant at all.
Any other discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion for the resolution?
Mayor, I move approval.
A motion from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Carver. Any further discussion? All right, let's do this by roll call. If you would, please answer yea or nay as the city clerk calls your name, and we can start down at 7 just to be alternating which way we're going. So,
Alderman Vaughn.
Yay.
Vice Mayor Perkins.
Nay.
Alderman Beatty.
Nay.
Alderman Walker.
Yay.
Alderman Little.
Yay.
Alderman Sistrum.
Yay.
Alderman Carver.
Yay.
all right, thank you. By a vote of 5 to 2, the motion carries. Next item is a sort of a companion motion. So, and this is the resolution authorizing the execution of the reimbursement agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Carver. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
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 All right. By a vote of 5 to 2, motion carries. Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Gorse.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the, under planning, it's the consideration of approving the development agreement between the City of Starkville and IMS Development LLC and Alabama Limited Liability Company known as Vista. Dr. Kim.
Yes, this is about the development agreement. The project is located on University Drive, actually right on the Camp Avenue. This is the area photo. They have access from the north, right there, to the site, and also south from the Camp Avenue. So construction can go from that direction. The cause, regular development process is going through the preliminary plat, infrastructure installation, and final plat. building permit and certificate of occupancy. But in this case, due to the size of the project that has 4-story buildings and parking buildings and 4 buildings, so infrastructure installation and building permit occurred concurrently. In fact, the first building permit was issued in March last year. So the entire infrastructure for all buildings has not been completed, and until it is completed, the final plan cannot be recorded. The developer wants to acquire a temporary certificate of occupancy because the first building was completed and now second building is on. They did not want to just leave the vacant building for 5 months or so. But the city do not have such an instrument to permit each buildings in one lot before the final plat. This development agreement will be the instrument, and this is the preliminary plat. There are lot 1 through lot 4, but currently it is only within one lot. The purpose of this agreement is to ensure timely issuance of temporary certificate of occupancy and also ensure required improvements throughout the process and ensure safety during the construction process and ensure recording the final plat before the issuance of the CO. The development agreement has 4 parts. Article 1, first part is about the agreement, and Article 2 is about the term. Article 3 is about the events of default, and Article 4 is about general provisions. Among those, agreement is regarding the required improvements and safety measures to acquire TCO for each building, 1,000 and 2,000. That leads into the final plat and the CO for the entire buildings, 1,000 through 4,000. All work on building shall be constructed in accordance with the applicable codes of the city. The city shall use good faith efforts to timely issue all TCOs and COs in accordance with the terms and conditions of this agreement. And mostly developer agrees to hold the city harmless and indemnify the city against all cost claims and damages against the city. First building TCO was issued already in October 14th and 2019 this year. Because it is one building in one lot, we could issue the TCO, but from the building 2000 and on, we cannot issue anything because it'll be another building on the same lot. For the second building, the developer wants to get a TCO by September 5th, 2019, but it is anticipated to be delayed until September 19th, 2019 due to the delays in the construction. The required improvements is first overall grading and erosion control. The city staff has been carefully watching that's been done. And another thing is the building. They completed the first building, as you can see from the picture. And the road and parking, we ensures that the road and parking improvements has been done properly. And this is the Camp Avenue. The developer need to complete this Camp Avenue before the issuance of the TCO for the second building. So this picture was taken today. They are working on it. And utilities need to be provided, and the pedestrian routes need to be provided. And also, we need to assure that the separation of the construction areas need to be provided. As you can see, that the fences has been installed and divided the construction site and the living area. And the pedestrian canopy has been installed so to protect the pedestrians from the construction. And also emergency vehicle access has been assured, so we have fire hydrants and we have the paved areas, paved access. Traffic control plan has been prepared, and stop signs and street markings were provided, and the stormwater management system has been installed properly. So this is the TCO for the phase 1, the building 1000. They completed building 1000 and first floor of the parking building, and they provided paved access areas. They separated that construction site and living areas. This would be for the phase 2, building 2000, and we will issue if those improvements, all the improvements are the finished and safety are assured. For the phase 3, everything will be done, and we are expecting to provide them the final CO. This will be done at the end of the year. Suggested motion is a move approval of the development agreement by and between the City of Starkville, Mississippi, and Mississippi Municipal Corporation, and the IMS Development LLC, and Alabama Limited Liability Company to the development of the Vista Starkville project.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. And Mr. Latimer, you have looked at that agreement, and that is satisfactory in your...
Yes, and edited it, and it's been edited by many parties, so it's a negotiated document.
Okay. And something I had in mind I was going to ask, and I've now forgotten what it was, so never mind. Alderman Walker.
Dr. Kim, question. At the time of final plat, so the temporary CO is going to, where you're breaking it in lots 1 through 4. At time of final plat, do those lot lines go away, and are they platted at the final plat?
Yes. Let me explain it procedurally. First building, TCO was already issued. And second building, if everything is assured within the agreement, and that TCO will be issued. And after that, they gotta have to finish their infrastructure completely, and then record the final plat, and then we will issue the CO for the entire buildings.
So at this point, in your opinion, when we send out inspectors or whoever, are the plan has been approved, is that's what is being constructed by city code?
Yes.
Yes. And what we have as an alternative from the city, the building department, is that if the requirements as set forth for each of those buildings to the satisfaction of the building department aren't maintaining the health, safety, and welfare of the pedestrians in the areas where the temporary COs have already been released, we just won't issue the final or other temporary COs.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So the burden is on the developer, Mr. Jackson, and y'all to do what you're supposed to do. And we have the capability of not issuing those COs if they're not doing everything that the city requires of them to do. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mayor, with that, I move approval.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Alderman Walker. I have a second from Alderman Little. And let me say one point of clarification. I did think what it was I was remembering. You had said they have access from the north, but that is only for construction at this point.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure that was clear because their access is limited to construction at this point. So, all right.
Yeah, that was the explanation, that the construction site and access and the living area access drive is separated.
Right. Okay, thank you.
So provide access for buildings 3 and 4. They're going to be accessing those from the north and not on the new city street where you're going to have separation of people, residents and people that are visiting there versus the construction traffic.
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5-1, motion carries. All right, we have a claims docket. Do I have a motion for? I have a motion from Alderman Little for a claims docket. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Beatty. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, a vote of 5-1, motion carries. HR.
Mayor, I'd move that we take this under advisement as well because it kind of goes hand in hand with the budget.
Okay, so you want to take that under advisement under the same heading as we took up the budget and the millage increase, is that correct?
Correct.
Can we have, he's left, hasn't he? Has he left now?
He just walked out, I don't know if he's coming back.
Okay. we were going to have a presentation by the Stennis Institute. I hate for him to have waited this long and then not get to provide us information, but if the board prefers, we did have it at the work session.
Mayor,
so-
I want to hear it tonight. We're here to hear it.
Okay, Vice Mayor, if you would you go get him, Mr. Kemp, please? Thank you. All right, so, but we can go ahead and continue with that motion. Did you make them? Okay, Alderman Little made the motion to treat this as we have the budget and the millage rate. So I have a motion. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
I have a second from Alderman Sistrunk. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, by a vote of 5-1, motion carries. All right, so we can actually, well, I guess we can go on. Well, no, we can't. Let's either get him back or we'll let Mr. Clements do his security camera policy here in a second. Okay. His special dispensation for having sat that long, I understand. Should I make that announcement?
Maybe we can break for 5 minutes. I can swallow my coat.
Well, you go right ahead.
Now you'll start the meeting.
It'll be okay.
Yeah, when you announce that, I would just re-announce the other one too. Just do both of them. And then Lisa, when you notice those, notice both of them after the meeting tonight. Just one extra page, right? An extra day and time.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I didn't write the statute.
If you would please, the Vice Mayor in particular would like to have you come forward and provide him the information on the salary survey that you have done, please. And Joel, can you, yes, you've got it pulled up. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, the PDF I sent, it puts all the data sheets sideways to fit
Uh-oh.
to fit on the
Okay.
1x17. So
Okay.
I do have my hand copy here if you'd like to take a look at it. So-
Okay, well, I have seen it. So Vice Mayor, did you get a copy of that?
I'm looking, man. I'm listening.
Okay.
Sure, you can actually take a
Go
look.
ahead. I'm with you. Keep
Okay,
going.
excellent. So what we aim to do is we were looking at a more targeted salary comparison survey. A couple of years ago, we did a survey where we surveyed 73 different municipalities. We got about 38 responses. We had a very general survey with a lot of industry numbers. What we got here today is a more direct comparison salary survey. We received 14 responses, each of which have direct comparables to these positions within the city of Starkville. Here on page 4, it actually shows the respondents themselves. We got a few folks near the city of Memphis, a few near the city of Jackson. Then most importantly, we got mostly around this area, Columbus, Tupelo, then the Golden Triangle. As you can see, we got several other utility companies as well, Columbus Water and Light, New Albany Water and Light, West Point Water and Light. Let's see. The survey, we surveyed approximately 130 different job titles over two dozen different departments. Some major areas of note that are, I guess, different from last Friday's meeting. Certain positions are much lower than others. Firefighters, we were under in pay between 12 and 15%. Police officers between 11 and 13%. And that's on page 11 for fire department and page 23 for the police. So what we surveyed for were for the survey average or survey mean, the median pay, the minimum maximum pay to get the ranges, number of responses were, of respondents that actually had that job title itself. Then the most important number is the percent to the mean. That's a reflection on how close the city of Starkville is paying in relation to the comparables themselves. So as you can see, if you scroll down, especially to the lower tenured firefighters, you'll see they're about 84% to the mean, which means they're under this average about 16%. Same thing with police, if you go down to page 23. Many of those are, especially the lesser tenured, are more like, they're more about 13% under the survey mean. Kind of right down there at the bottom. So, other positions of note, sanitation workers, many of them are 15% or even lower to the mean. Apprentice linemen, several of them were 13% under the mean. So, with a directed study, you're more or less looking for as close to the mean as you can get, within 100. With a general study, you can go a little bit lower in terms of what you're trying to aim for. But with the more direct study, we're trying to get as close to 100 as we can. So that's essentially, that was more my recommendation to Mr. Ashford. So those are just some of the more major areas of note, in addition to what we discussed on Friday's work session. I was going to turn it over to Nav to sort of discuss some of his recommendations.
Vice Mayor Perkins, did you have any questions of this gentleman?
He was here, I just wanted to, I don't have time to be wasted.
Okay.
Oh,
All
sure.
right,
And
thank you. All right.
now that everyone's had a few days to actually to read the survey itself, I just wanted to know if anybody else had any additional questions since our meeting on Friday.
Okay. Does anyone
If
have
there's
any?
if there's any specific
any
departments I can
questions?
address. I didn't want to come here and discuss all 130 job titles if you didn't need me to. So.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Anyone?
I'm fine, Mayor.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you, Vice
Thanks for your
Mayor.
presence. Thank you,
Appreciate
sir. Thank you.
appreciate you coming, Mr. Ashford. Do you have anything you wish to add? Okay, all right. If there are no questions of Mr. Ashford, okay, we have taken action on this matter while you were out, and we have postponed it until we take up the work session as we were doing the other matters
Sure.
earlier. So thank you again for all your help in putting this forward.
Excellent. No
We
problem.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have IT, which is approval of a City of Starkville municipal security camera policy. And Mr. Clements, would you like to address this?
The Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board, good evening. So tonight I've brought two policies before you, the first of which is the security camera policy. Something that Sergeant Lovelady and I have been working on since we expanded the camera project. It's a very powerful tool. It's something that should not be taken lightly. It includes a lot of responsibility. So we researched what other municipalities had done in this area and found that there were many policies out there to choose from, different areas of concern and things that we wanted to just put pen to paper and get an official policy in place, because of course we've heard the feedback as we've implemented this as well. One of the big concerns is privacy. So this policy was provided in your packet for you to peruse. It's a few pages long, but we wanted to really codify the purpose of this project, what this tool is for, who has access and control over this powerful tool, and what ultimately it can be used for, as far as we speak directly to. It's intended only for viewing public places where there's no expectation of privacy. This is for city streets and wide open areas where the police officers would typically patrol throughout the city, and we wanted to just go ahead and make sure we put that down in a policy as well. So if there are any questions, I'll certainly entertain that as to what else this policy speaks to.
Okay. Anyone have any questions about the policy? I think it's excellent that we have one, and I'm delighted that you and Corporal Lovelady worked on it.
Did I give him a promotion? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. What did you?
He's Sergeant. Okay.
He's Sergeant. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He used to be Corporal.
That's right.
I'm playing catch up. I apologize. Sergeant Lovelady worked on this together, and I think it's been a really good collaborative effort. Any questions of the board members? Alderman Walker.
Attorney Latimer, you have any issues with the language or how things worded?
I've reviewed it. I think it's a good policy.
Mayor, I move approval.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Alderman Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Sistrunk. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, by a vote of 6-0, motion carries. Second one is a social media policy, which took us quite a while to put together. It's been going on for almost 2 years now, I believe, but would you like to provide that one as well, please?
That's right. Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Ashford and I have been mulling this over for some time at the direction of the mayor, and of course it's something that social media, another powerful tool, another powerful force in society. So really, again, we kind of looked around and got best of breed ideas on the social media policy. And really, it covers two things. One of them is more of an HR aspect, and one of them is more of a technology aspect. So the HR aspect is more what our expectation is as a city about our employees and how they represent themselves on social media, and if they are traveling under the representation as an official of the city or representative of the city, what is acceptable. Again, that's detailed in this policy. It's a few pages long. And then from my perspective as the IT director, what I really wanted to drive home as well was that the tools that we provide as a city, the devices and the network access and the software is for city business. So it's only for a city purpose. And of course, there are some legitimate city purposes as pertaining to social media. We've really been great about getting the word out via all the different social media aspects. But we really just wanted to drive home. And this is not a reaction to anything. There's no issue that I've been made aware of. This is more of a proactive thing. Just saying on city time and on city devices and on city networks, you're to do city business. So that, from my perspective, that was important. And Mr. Ashford may want to speak a little bit more to the HR aspect of it as far as the expectations about employees. But again, this is something we sent to Attorney Latimer some time ago, of course, to vet as well. And I think I'll let him speak to that, but I think he found no issues with that.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Latimer, anything you wish to add to any of that?
No, ma'am, that's true.
Okay. And I'm very glad to see that we had the policy as well, because I actually think we're not as proactive in this one as you should have been, because I think we should have done it several years ago. But nonetheless, I'm glad we've got it now. So any discussion from anyone? Any questions of either Mr. Clements or Mr. Ashford? All right, do we have an motion?
No approval.
I have a motion from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Beatty. Further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, that takes us down to our closed determination session. I have a motion to go into closed session from Alderman Little. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Alderman Walker. Discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's unanimous. If you would, please clear the room. We're going to go into closed determination session to determine the need to go into executive session. All right, the mayor and board have agreed to go into executive session to discuss pending litigation relating to a stop work order and 2 EEOC complaints. So if you would clear the room, and we will go into executive session. Thank you so much. All right, the board is out of executive session, and Alderman Attorney Latimer, starts with an A. Attorney Latimer has handwriting that not all of us can read, so he's going to read the motion as he took it down, so.
The board moved that the stop work order associated with Country Club Estates Phase 3 be lifted so that the developer can proceed with remediation efforts to the northernmost cul-de-sac of Turnberry Lane, which abuts the Greenbrier subdivision.
Okay, thank you, and that motion was passed unanimously. Okay, and then that takes us down to our recess, except that I'm going to read the language calling for both work sessions. In accordance with the notice required under Mississippi Code annotated 254113, the board will be having a budget work session on the 5th of September at 4 p.m. and the 13th of September 2019 at 1:15 p.m. Those meetings will be held at City Hall in the second floor conference room located at 110 West Main Street. Public and media are invited to attend. Notice shall be provided of these work sessions within 1 hour of this meeting by posting such notice at City Hall. The notice for the work sessions will be made a part of the minutes of the board meeting, and the work sessions will be open public meeting. The City of Starkville public and press are invited to attend. Do I have a motion to recess?
So moved.
I have a motion from Alderman Little. Do I have a second? Second from Alderman Beatty. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are in recess. Thank you all.
Thank you.